Second down and 10. They're in field goal range. Pressure. He stepped away from it. Fires, and it is caught. Oh, the deflection. Jalen Pope, the touchdown off the hands of Malik Muhammad.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Advance to the national championship game. Ewers lobs it up, and it is incomplete. Intended for Mitchell. Elijah Jackson had the coverage. Washington hangs on and wins the All-State Sugar Bowl with a college football playoff semifinal.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Has thrown for 398. Trying to get above 400, and he's on target. Odunze the catch with Ryan Watts.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Has time, delivers across the middle, and the catch is made by Tyler Morris, who goes down the sidelines. Touchdown, Michigan, what a play!
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
High punt, and it's muffed again and picked up at the 1 yard line. Well, it wasn't a turnover, but it sets up McCarthy a long way away. That was Jake Thaw back there, not Morgan this time.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Three Michigan tight ends in the ball game. They handed to Corum again and makes the cut. First down. Spins and scores. Blake Corum puts Michigan on top in overtime.
Now here's Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak.
Welcome back. Smokey is on the comeback trail. I promise. I promise he is. He tried his darndest to get in here today, but he also, Smokey, and I say this with all the love in the world, does not know what being sick means. he gets so stir crazy. So he is going to take the weekend and recoup. But we have a full show today. I'm sorry about that. We've got Dan Hope from 11 Warriors coming up here in about 25 minutes to talk about Will Howard and Ohio State and how that came to fruition. Grayson Grundhafer will tell us about what's going on at Baylor and the transfer portal, including some pretty big names that are in the portal that have visited Baylor or are considering visiting Baylor, which would not have been their strategy just a year ago, being this aggressive. Also, we'll have Josh Neighbors from our Crystal Ball College Football Channel and the Big 12 Watch on at 4 o'clock. Scott Wright will talk OSU. He's with the Daily Oklahoman, and their quarterback getting a 7th year of eligibility, and Alan Bowman, which brings me to the first story here, Craig, which is very interesting. So in light of Alan Bowman getting a 7th year, Tailua Tagovailoa has entered the transfer portal. He would be a grad transfer. But here's the thing about Tailua Tagovailoa. He technically, right now at this moment, has no eligibility left. He has played and used all of his 5 years, but his contention is going to be that in 2019, when he played in 5 games for Alabama, 2 of which he didn't throw a pass and he only threw 12 passes, that should not count. Had he only played 4 games in that year, he would not have played his 5 years yet, which to me would be very interesting in opening up the floodgates of what even is an eligibility clock anymore.
Yeah, I think we've long passed the point of no return when it comes to the eligibility conversation. It's one that needs to be had. It's one that needs to be clarified a little bit, and it's one where I feel like he's probably going to get a waiver because when are we seeing people say no, honestly? I mean, I know there's a few cases here and there. The Raekwon Battle, West Virginia story was a hot one there for a second, but what happened? He eventually got cleared, and I know there's a little instance here and there where that's not been the case, and you see the fans of various teams pop up in the mentions of a story like this and say, well, what about Sarah who didn't get, and things like that. So I know there's examples of where that's not been, a situation that you're absolutely getting your extra year. But yeah, in this case, I mean, just with where we are and the way things have kind of gone, I think it's a safe bet to assume that you'll find a way to win that, appeal, or that challenge. But to see him, decide to give it another go, I think is obviously very notable. Big time thrower, big time player, and did some really good things with Maryland. And so, yeah, I guess, would you consider this a bit of a gamble? I mean, I guess the alternative is you don't get it and you go try your stock in the pros. But, I mean, why not try it if you feel like you want to play another year of college football, and you're seeing an Alan Bowman get year number 7, and you're seeing Gary Bohannon get year number 7, and you're seeing other guys get year number 7. So, I mean, and if he were to get that, I think that's obviously a big name that's out there. So, we'll see, I guess, what comes of that. But very interesting to see, where we are just with trying to figure everything out. It seems like it's just so complicated, but not really complicated, because it's not like, I don't know, man. It's just a weird spot that we're in where I don't know what matters and what rules matter and what actually ever is just a hard and fast rule. Not that everything has to be hard and fast. I think there's some things, obviously, that you, with more details, can determine different things about. But it's a weird landscape right now, which we've touched on a million times. And so, why not challenge it? See if you can get another year of eligibility and be another guy who's been around for a while that'll be back to add even another veteran quarterback to the college football landscape next season.
Yeah, my thinking will be. Or my thinking is that when the new model comes out, whatever that is, the new, as talks continue on what that will be in the new landscape of college football and college athletics, I think the eligibility clock will get raised, but have a kind of a hard limit on it. Because ultimately, look, if you're 26, 27 years old and you're not a professional athlete yet, maybe you need to just move on. But I do think it'll get raised to a certain level and then stop, because you do still have to keep the rosters churning, right? You got to still keep the young guys coming in that you want.
Yeah, I mean, we're in the middle of the COVID logjam right now as far as that goes,
So, but there'll be some sort of agreement made, because, again, you're going to have to collectively bargain all this stuff out. So some kind of agreement will be made, and then you can move on with it of okay, well, now everybody has 6 years and you could petition for a 7th, with injury circumstances or things like that.
And he's going for his 6th, not his 7th, like we've seen some others that we mentioned that were granted there. So odds.
Well, I mean, there was a player recently, I can't remember which school he wound up at. I think it was Oregon State or something, but he was in his 8th year of eligibility because of all the injuries.
Dude,
he was a tight end, and that's just
I love college football and some of the wonkiness, but some of it, I just have to put my foot down. Come on. 8th year of eligibility. I mean, come on. What are we doing here?
Maybe it's time to move on with your life.
I think so.
Yeah. Take the next step. I know it's hard. Look, there is nothing I have watched from doing the job that we do and knowing a lot of the people that we do than those first couple of years after sports are over for athletes that are elite and, college athletes. Because if you're a college athlete, you're an elite athlete. But then you start the filter keeps going of the elite of the elite of the elite. And if you're not in the top 1% of that top 1% and you're, when college is over, your athletics are over, it's hard for professional athletes. It's hard for everybody when that ends.
I just saw a video of, it was the documentary that NFL Network did a couple years ago about Calvin Johnson and how he had to retire because he was just so ravaged by injuries. And it was very abrupt, and nobody other than really he himself knew for the majority of his final season. And then after, playing, I think it was either right before his final game or right after his final game, he finally went and told Jim Caldwell, the head coach at the time, and let him know. And, he was sort of shocked, but also I think all the Lions knew like how banged up he really was, and and it really covered that thoroughly in the documentary. But yeah, like he didn't want to go, but sometimes you just have to, and it's
hard, and like it's hard for guys who are having to retire with $50 million in the bank. Like they're even like, what do I do with myself? And the answer when you have that much money is whatever the F you want, man. But it's still hard because you feel like, what's my value to the world if I'm not this guy who I always was? You know, it's tough. And so I get that, but there is value to being able to look that square in the face. And it's for everybody. Like when you retire or when part of your life is over, you can't do something anymore. You just have to look it square in the face and go, okay, what's next? I mean, that's a terrifying and wonderful thing of life is what's next.
Yeah, the COVID extra year really logjam things, as we said a few moments ago, and they're still kind of clearing the cars out and trying to get traffic flowing and moving, and with this eligibility clock being the way that it is and waivers and all this and whatnot, it's created a weird situation where I was thinking about this from a Baylor standpoint, because I was just trying to think of like article ideas and whatnot, and I was thinking about all of the youth last year, and I know some people hear that and they roll their eyes like, yeah, everybody's got young players and this and that, but then you take into account that a guy like Caden Jenkins is sitting there playing against a 6-year player in Alan Bowman, or, this 6-year guy over here, this wide receiver that he's covering. It's like, no, that kind of does matter. And, well, everybody's got freshmen. Yeah, but not everybody's got 4-star freshmen that are going to be gone in 3 years. And so if you are a Baylor, for example, or some of these other teams, like I do think you have to kind of take that into account, the youth these days, because there are teams like Oklahoma State next year, and they've got more guys. Oliver, I think, did Kendall Daniels say earlier, he's coming back for another year, so that's great for Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
But just using this as an example, that's going to be a really old team next year. Like I don't know what the average across the board will be, but as far as like their returning impact guys, they would have to be, in my mind, one of the oldest teams in college football. That will be an advantage for them next year. 2 years ago when Baylor won the Big 12 title, that was an old football team. There's an advantage to having grown men versus 18, 19-year-olds. So some teams have been able to realize that, taking advantage of that, whether it be just gathering more veteran players or having guys come back for 6th, 7th years. And so, we're seeing a lot of that, and I guess we'll see if Tagovailoa is able to get a 6th year. That's not that crazy.
No.
But we'll see, I guess, what becomes of that. I know that at one point he was talking to Mike Loxley, I think it was probably mentioned in most of the articles about his NFL dreams and moving on and all that. But, what's also created this situation is NIL. Like, why move on to a regular job? I'm going to make $50,000 graduating from Oklahoma State at AT&T or whatever my first year, or I could come play Oklahoma State quarterback for a 7th year and make $150,000. And so that right there is, I think, the numero uno reason more than any other of why go get a job for less money when I can play football for another year and never graduate. So that's awfully tempting. That's awfully enticing, especially if you're somebody, to your point of, you don't want to give up the game just yet, and you don't have a pro future that's guaranteed whatsoever. So, why not play another year, make 6 figures, more than you would make coming out of school probably, and soak it up like Van Wilder one more go-around. I mean, so it's easy to see from a player's perspective why that would be something that you'd want to pursue. And, until, I guess, that bonus year rolls off and we get back to more, I guess, normal, then it's going to be that way, especially with NIL. But hey, good for the players. Like I'm not knocking it, but I do think it's just kind of silly from a college football fan perspective, if I'm being honest, which I always am on this show. For better or worse, I just think it's goofy. I think it's silly to have a 25-year-old, and I know there's plenty of examples. I've seen Brandon Whedon's name mentioned 1,000 times in the last 24 hours, but he went and played baseball.
Look, I, as a Florida State fan, can't complain because I had Chris Winkie.
Right.
He was the quarterback when I was in school.
But he went and played baseball, and he came back to college.
Yeah.
He didn't just play from 19 to or 18 to 25 or whatever. So it's strange, but that's the landscape that we're in. So good for Alan Bowman. We'll see with Tagovailoa if he gets that 6th year, and if he does, then that's going to be news. I mean, that's going to be obviously huge news because there's suddenly a pretty good quarterback that's available out there in the market that otherwise is not right now, and we know the appetite that there is for the quarterbacks in this game. So yeah, that's something to definitely keep an eye on. And I don't know when this kind of clears up, but NIL's definitely muddied the waters. That's another area you can look and say that's created some of this without a doubt. And by the way, I went and looked up that player you were talking about, the 8th year. Seth Towns, does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
Is that who you were thinking of? Former Ivy League Player of the Year. He'll be eligible for his 8th season of college hoops. So here's what I picked up.
No, it's not about there's a football player.
Oh, it's a football player?
Football player. But yes, I know who this guy is
his
too.
8th year. So he picked Harvard originally and started out at Harvard. He picked them over Ohio State and Michigan. He played 2 seasons with Harvard. Had a knee injury that knocked him out of the 2018-19 season and then the 2019-2020 season. So 2 years of playing, 2 years of injuries. Goes to Ohio State for 2021, played in 25 games. Then in 2021, he had back surgery. In 2022, stepped away from basketball. So it wasn't like he was playing the whole time. So there is that caveat there that clears that up because it's like, how in the world? So then he stepped away, and then I guess now then announced that he was transferring again, restructured, in his own words, his relationship with basketball, and then decided to come back. And so that's the year 8 journey there. But that just seems like a lot. That seems like a lot.
We've got football players in the portal that are on their 4th school, you know, or basketball players on their 4th school, and that's just not like, part of that is just like, look, if you can't make it at 2 schools, then it's not going to work out for you.
Well, we're seeing a lot of 3rd school guys now. Yeah. That's becoming quite common, is to see the 3 schools. But, it's, I don't want to make this to be some kind of anti-athlete rant. I just think that it's getting to be such a weird deal with 7th-year seniors and things like that, and then the wave now of older players who don't have NFL futures that are like, I'm going to stick around as long as possible and make as much money. And I totally get that. And if I was in their shoes, if I was Alan Bowman, guess what I would have done? Probably the same exact thing. Like, I can stick around Stillwater for another year, be the starting quarterback, make 6 figures, and I don't know what he's making, but I have to imagine it's 6 figures, right? Like, especially with the year they had running to the Big 12 title. So, hey, look, besides all that, and I think that's one of the chapters of the current landscape, the conversations that are all going on, whether it's realignment or it's name, image, likeness, or it's the games themselves. Yay, go actual football on the field. This is also one of those things that's just sort of very much a hot button topic or something that needs to get figured out a little bit. But it's also, we're still in the wheel of the COVID year. And so that's just part of it. And NIL and all those forces just sort of coming together has created this perfect storm where you do have a pretty clear and growing disparity now of just a glut of much older players than we're accustomed to seeing in college football, still being around longer than we'd ever seen before. So it's interesting. Yeah.
By the way, if you want to know where I think Taylor Tagovailoa is going, if and when he gets his extra year, it rhymes with Miami.
Well, somebody's got to go there and play quarterback, right?
Look, it makes a whole lot of sense for everybody involved. Look, somebody's got to go to Miami and play quarterback. He's really good. He's a really good player. So that really works out for them and better than maybe where they would be if he doesn't go there. And he has an older brother that is the quarterback of the professional team down there. You may have heard of the Dolphins. So his family doesn't really have to go all over the place anymore to watch. Not that they can't afford it, but like it would just be a whole thing because they are a very close family. And being in Miami for a year before he gets his own shot at the pros once again, I think is just too perfect of a scenario, for everyone involved. And it's not like the Miami collective isn't, sitting down there going, well, we just have all this money, we have no money burning a hole in our pocket to give a guy. They've been trying. So,
well, that's the one you circle the wagons to go and sign him up. I mean, Big Ten all-time passing leader, Maryland record holder in numerous categories. He had a really great career up there. And so, he'll be highly coveted if he gets this extra year, which is now, I think it was mentioned in the article too, of like he may have already gotten it and just nobody's aware of it yet. Like, so we'll see on that. I think that would obviously become public pretty quickly, but who knows? Like maybe there's already back channel negotiations going on for all we know there. But I'll say this too about just that story in general and just how it relates to, an Alan Bowman. But an Alan Bowman coming back and all the others that have announced they're coming back, including Ollie Gordon. I mean, Oklahoma State, like I said, is going to be one of the older teams, which should benefit them. or it will be an advantage of some sort. And I think, you're already starting to see the interest get drummed up for next year because they're like, hey, we got to the Big 12 championship game. We're returning all of these guys back. All of our biggest playmakers are pretty much coming back. And next year there won't be any Texas in our way. There will be no Oklahoma, even though you beat them. But, they're out of there. And so when you have that conversation about, first of all, I don't think anybody's just going to be a dominant team like there's every year going to be. Because even when Texas and Oklahoma here, Oklahoma was that for a good stretch as far as just winning the conference. But I don't think that's going to be the case in this new league. I don't think there's going to be some dynasty. But it should be a situation where when you're reeling off the teams and you say Texas Tech or you say TCU or whoever, you better put some respect on Oklahoma State's name for one. But I think that, definitely with all of these decisions, that they are even more so a team that you've got to sit there and go and look long and hard at and go they're a team that seems to be pretty set up pretty well for at least next year, certainly with all of these big announcements.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's go real quick, Garrett. What are some of the other transfer portal tweets we have? We'll just run through these because we got to take a break and get to Dan Hope next. We got a couple guests, but there's a Ross Dellinger story about SMU not getting any money, potentially in the CFP, which we'll get to after our guest. Miami, Ohio transfer Caden Willard on the top 5 yesterday. Craig, where did I tell you he was probably going? Oklahoma, and that's where he is. So a nice pickup for Brent Venables in the defense.
Yeah, a really good pickup in their new defensive coordinator. We saw that story yesterday drop about Ted Roof being out, and I made mention that hey, I'm sure the real scoop's over on the message boards and all that, and apparently it was something that Venables had been working through, I guess, behind the scenes for quite a while. That's why there was such a quick hire made after you saw that that they were parting ways, and then 2, 3, 4 hours later, however long it was, they were announcing that they've already got their new guy in Zach Alley, who's coming over from Jacksonville State, has a history with Venables at Clemson and a very thorough history. So it's a guy that he's super familiar with and obviously had kind of already picked out and moved very quickly on. And I know that there was there's somebody pointed out a post. It was either a very observant person or just somebody with a wild guess that was good. But somebody from the message, the Sooner Scoop, I think it was, had said they were flight tracking. They were flight tracking, and I guess there was a flight from Oklahoma to Alabama, and people were trying to figure out what's it for and all this. And somebody had said well, maybe there's this connection to the Zach Alley guy or whatever. And I don't know. That came across yesterday. I was like, wow, that's either somebody who had insight, is pretending to not have insight, or is just a really educated and great guess. But they were spot on. It was a flight, that was going down there to probably check out Zach Alley. And so he's the new DC, and they pick up one of the top players still sitting there in the portal and an edge rusher, which we know every defense is coveting these days. And so, that seems like a double whammy of good news for the Sooners yesterday.
All right, LSU running back Logan Diggs is in the transfer portal. And Garrett, this was a very unproductive position overall for LSU in 2023. But the 3 guys that they'll have in that room have a grand total of a year of experience, right? Even though one of them is one of the best running backs in the country, that they just got a commitment for and signed the other day, a 5-star running back for 2023, Harlem Barry, thank you, Craig. So they've got some exciting guys coming in, but they're probably going to need to get in the portal and get some vets in there.
You're definitely going to have to find some, because right now, if you look at this roster, you got 2 freshmen and Caleb Jackson and Trey Hawley there. You're bringing in Caden Durham from Duncanville, which obviously he's going to have to work in there. And you could also find yourself in a situation to bring back Noah Kane for a 5th year. But this is a very young room. If you look at how this offense is going to work next year, you got to see that glimpse of it the other day in the ReliaQuest Bowl. Garrett Nussmeier's not mobile. And they struggle to rush the ball this year. I think they're going to have to bring somebody in from the portal. I don't know if it'll be this wave or if it's going to be the next wave. Obviously, we still don't know the truth and where Quinshon Judkins is going to end up. I would hope that LSU would be in the mix for him. More than likely Auburn. I think we're all probably –
if I had to put money on it, that's probably where I'd go.
But, there's somebody out there. I think they have to go address this in the portal again, and then hopefully you can just rely on the development of these young guys, but then you got to keep them, right? That's the thing. So, it's going to be interesting to see how LSU navigates this.
Yeah.
And the Quinshon Judkins thing, it was strange to see. I'm sure you all saw the deleted tweets and some of the rumor mill going around about his attitude or his character and all that. I feel like some of that's probably true, especially when you see a teammate who's posting something ominous and then deleting it very quickly when it's very clear what they're talking about. But I think all of that too, or some of that too, is definitely like
sour grapes.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a great player. Don't know about him as a teammate, but that's going to be a very interesting one to watch because somebody's getting a really good running back.
Well, yeah, and then the thing is that if he's just a slightly bad teammate, if you can make him a slightly good teammate for 9 months, you're fine.
That's it. Yeah, I mean,
he's
he's a hired gun basically.
Yeah,
I mean, in so many ways with one. Yeah,
well, that's all he's going to look. Quinshon Judkins is going to play 1 year for Georgia or Auburn or Florida or wherever he's going to wind up. Whoever's going to pay him, and Oklahoma. I mean, wherever it is. Whoever he winds up, and then he's going to be in the NFL draft. Jaquindon Jackson, who we talked about yesterday, he is on his way to Arkansas. So that's an interesting one. He's from Duncanville. He played quarterback in high school, and then Arkansas is his third school because he was at Texas and then at Utah. Now finish up his career at Arkansas. True. Another interesting one I thought was Trill Carter, who transferred to Texas last year from Minnesota, was a defensive tackle. Wasn't really as big in their rotation as I think maybe you thought he would be.
I didn't hear his name along with Byron Murphy and all those guys. Yeah.
But he is also in the transfer portal. Texas, and here I'll tell you how good things are going for Texas, and this is the last thing we'll do. You're at a point when you're good enough to where the guys who are in the transfer portal are like, oh, what's a bummer, it didn't work out. As opposed to like, holy crap, this guy did. Like, there are some guys, Ole Miss is probably not sweating Quinshon Judkins all that much because they're pretty confident about where they're going to be, but they're probably like, holy crap, how did this happen? So
yeah, I mean, I think too, like with Trill Carter, he still played. I mean, he played throughout the year. He just wasn't. He was overshadowed immensely by their better players up there. But he's graduated, and so he'll move on. And that's something I do want to make mention of with our original conversation of like, if you're Alan Bowman and you're stacking degrees, like, good on you, buddy. Like, if you're going to have like a master's by the time you leave,
he's got an MBA from Michigan.
So I mean, that dude is well set up, so he's not going to start off making $50,000. Like, he's going to have like a pretty good job when all said and done. So I do want to make mention of that because if you're still taking care of your schoolwork and doing all those things and setting yourself up, then that is a whole different story than just like hanging around. In the case of Alan Bowman, I do think that needs to be a part of the story. Is the dude's going to be like triple degreed up with, like Michigan and Oklahoma State and all this. And so I commend that part of it, taking care of the school opportunities as well and setting yourself up very nicely for afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a break right here. When we come back, Dan Hope of 11 Warriors joins the program. He'll discuss how Will Howard and Ohio State's marriage came to be. This is 365 Sports.
During the Start Something New sales event at Allen Samuels in Waco, get incredible deals on our entire inventory selection of new Ram trucks, Jeeps, SUVs, Chrysler sedans, or sporty Dodge. Shop in-store or online today and drive into 2024 with confidence and excitement.
Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jewelry, they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repairs too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Boozers, the wedding ring store and more.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive in North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Welcome back, 365 Sports. Our good friend Dan Hope, 11 Warriors, covers Ohio State. And Dan, we in Big 12 country, plenty familiar with Will Howard. As he went into the transfer portal, Miami and USC were the early visits, and then this last week, Ohio State popped up. And until then, I'm sure many Ohio State fans in the college football world was a little puzzled as to what the plan was at quarterback after Kyle McCord. So how did this all come about, and why Will Howard being the best fit for them?
Yeah, so I first heard about it shortly before the Cotton Bowl that, Ohio State had been, talking to Will Howard, and that, there was a good chance that he was going to join the Buckeyes. And they decided to wait until after the Cotton Bowl to finalize anything. They wanted to see, how was Devin Brown going to look in that game. And then, of course, Devin Brown got hurt in the first quarter of that game, and they didn't really get a chance to really evaluate him. And, certainly I don't think they wanted to go into next year with a complete unknown at quarterback. And so, things moved pretty quickly, I think, after the Cotton Bowl in terms of, getting Will Howard, on campus for an official visit and, finalizing that commitment.
Dan, why is this an upgrade over Kyle McCord? How is it an upgrade in your mind over Kyle McCord?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know that I can sit here and tell you, it's a definite upgrade. I think we kind of have to see how that plays out. If you look statistically, Kyle McCord was the better passer than Will Howard last season, but, Will Howard was not throwing the ball to Marvin Harrison Jr. either. So that makes it. So, I think the one thing that you can point to with Will Howard that he has that Kyle McCord doesn't is a threat to make plays with his legs. I think that's something that certainly can be beneficial to Ohio State, something that they really lacked this past season. And, another thing, if you look at the numbers, when they're, under pressure in particular, Will Howard was a lot more effective throwing the ball under pressure at Kansas State than Kyle McCord was at Ohio State. And so when you think about the Cotton Bowl we just watched, how poor the offensive line was in that game, obviously, especially now that Will Howard is in the fold, I think the number one priority for Ohio State now is making sure you fix that offensive line for next year. But when that's going to be a position of uncertainty for next year, having a quarterback who can do some damage with his legs and who can create plays outside of a pocket like Will Howard can is certainly something that brings value.
So he won't have Marvin Harrison Jr., which for any quarterback who doesn't have Marvin Harrison Jr. is a bummer, even if they've never played with him, I'm sure, because he's that good. He won't have Ibuka, more than likely, right?
I've heard that there's a definite chance that Emeka Ibuka could be back. So obviously, no final decision has been made. He's got 10 days to announce his decision, but I do believe Ohio State is optimistic that it can get Emeka Ibuka back.
I know that they did lose a recruit, a 5-star recruit from last year to NC State in the portal, which was kind of a weird thing, I thought, but I'm sure you can shed some light on that as well. So what weapons will he have coming back?
Yeah, so, obviously if Emeka Ibuka comes back, he will be, the leader of that room. They did lose Marvin Harrison Jr., they did lose Julian Fleming, but they've got some very promising young talent. Carnell Tate is a guy who really everybody in the program has raved about since he arrived last January, and he's certainly someone that I think they are expecting to have that big second-year breakout next year. Brandon Innes is another, 5-star guy who's going to be entering his second year, who has a lot of potential. And then there's Jeremiah Smith, who's the number 1 overall prospect in the 2024 class. And he's a guy that you don't see a lot of freshmen start at wide receiver at Ohio State, but I think there's a very good chance that Jeremiah Smith will start as a freshman at Ohio State. I think he's that good that it's going to be hard to keep him off the field, and he's someone who's going to have the potential to come in and make a huge impact right away.
Dan, just what's the temperature like in the room right now for Buckeyes fans? 11-2, but they didn't want to be in a non-playoff game, obviously. Losing to Missouri, part of that, obviously, the quarterback injury, but still ending the season with the loss, and obviously the loss to Michigan. But not only that, the double whammy of Michigan's now playing for a national title. Just what does it feel like in Columbus when it comes to the temp of the program at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly some unrest in Columbus right now based on the way the season ended. As you mentioned, the loss to Michigan, of course. I mean, that's the game. That's what, really seasons get defined by in Columbus. So to lose that game 3 years in a row, to finish 11-2 3 years in a row. I mean, for most programs, going 11-2 3 years in a row would sound, but at Ohio State, the expectations are higher. And so I do believe that, Ryan Day's seat is getting warmer going into next season because, you've heard it from Ohio State. I mean, Ohio State openly says every year its goals are to beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, and win the national championship. And Ohio State has now gone 3 years without achieving any of those goals. And so I think there is very much pressure on Ryan Day and Ohio State to, beat Michigan and get back into the college football playoff next year.
Well, look, now with the 12-team playoff, though, you could not beat Michigan, not win the Big Ten, and then win the national championship. Would that be the only pill they could swallow if those two things didn't happen?
Yeah, I mean, certainly I think, you win a national championship at the end of the day, people are going to be happy. And, like you said, I mean, I think, when I say, got to make the college football playoffs, I think that becomes the minimum expectation now for a program like Ohio State. Is, making the college football playoff has always been viewed as an accomplishment. But now for Ohio State, that's just what you're going to be expected to do every year because with 12 teams, you look at the 10 years of a 4-team playoff, Ohio State would have been in that 12-team playoff every single year. And so that's just going to be the minimum expectation is making the college football playoff. Then the question is, will Ohio State actually win games in the playoff and make a run at that national title?
So, Dan, a school with a lot of great receivers, where do you have Marvin Harrison Jr. in your sort of pecking order as far as Ohio State legacy goes?
I put him number 1. I really do. I mean, you talk about a guy who's a 2-time unanimous All-American. Ohio State had never had a unanimous All-American at wide receiver before Marvin. Just the second Biletnikoff Award winner in Ohio State history. I mean, certainly could be the highest drafted wide receiver in Ohio State history. Obviously, being a younger guy, I mean, I didn't watch, I didn't cover Chris Carter and Terry, some of those guys live. So it's a little bit of a different perspective when you've covered someone. But I just think, how spectacular Marvin has been over the last 2 years. The one thing he doesn't have is he doesn't have that win over Michigan. He doesn't have that championship to his name. But I think if you just go off just individual greatness, I don't think Ohio State's ever had a better receiver than Marvin Harrison Jr.
So, Dan, defensively, though, which was a fantastic unit this past year, everything that Jim Knowles was brought in to do appeared to, except in the Michigan game, come to fruition. And even then, they still looked pretty darn good in a very tough game, in a rivalry game. And that looks like, well, Jack Sawyer's coming back, Tyleik Williams coming back. Pretty much, I mean, they're not really losing many guys off that unit, are they?
No, I mean, there's still a few big NFL draft decisions they're waiting on. Certainly Denzel Burke is a huge one at cornerback, JT Tuimoloau at defensive end, Jordan Hancock at nickel. So still a few, big decisions they're waiting on. But, I do believe Ohio State's optimistic that it could get some, if not all of those guys back. And so, if they do, I think that defense is going to be loaded. And so I think, there's every reason to expect Ohio State to have one of the best defenses in the country again next year.
So we started talking about Will Howard. We didn't really get into Kyle McCord a little bit. Was that surprising on your end, or was it just something that people maybe have felt was coming for a little bit?
I mean, it was definitely not expected that, 7 a.m. the morning the transfer portal opened, be in the portal. I think that certainly caught a lot of people by surprise. it was interesting because, the day before the portal opened, Ryan Day had a press conference to talk about, being selected to play in the Cotton Bowl. And, he was asked multiple times, is Kyle going to be the starter going forward? And he kept not answering that question. And so when he started not answering that question, you started to get that vibe of like, okay, maybe Kyle McCord's future isn't going to be at Ohio State. But, I was surprised by how quickly it happened. But I think, the reality of the situation was Ohio State just wasn't going to guarantee Kyle McCord the starting job for next season. And with him only having one more year of eligibility, he didn't want to take the risk of sticking around and potentially not being the starter for next year. And so that ultimately led to them going their separate ways.
Dan Hope, 11 Warriors. Dan, thanks so much. We'll talk to you again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
One of our go-to guys when it comes to Ohio State here on the program, Dan Hope. Great stuff. Yeah, it's interesting about how these things work, where you've got a guy who's 11-1, and then it's just like, well, we think we might want to upgrade, and look, he's got to do what he's got to do. But yeah, 7 a.m. the morning the portal opens, he had made his decision. So
sounds like maybe he had talked to Fran Brown prior to that.
Yeah.
Like maybe had some ducks lined up. I don't know. Not accusing anybody of anything, but we know how college football business goes. But yeah, he seemed to have thought that out. I mean, to be able to just jump right in there the moment the pool opened, you're the first diving in the deep end, cannonball style. Whether surprising or not, you certainly had thought that out or thought that through, and obviously landed at Syracuse. He pointed towards his Philadelphia connections with Fran Brown, or Fran Brown pointed to those. I remember in an interview I watched with him talking about picking up Kyle McCord, that it wasn't some abrupt thing, that Fran obviously was all around Temple twice over, and a Northeastern guy. He was down here in Texas for just a little while, made a great impact while he was here, but he was called to Georgia and had some time there and was able to learn with the best and be a part of some national titles, and then got called back home to the Northeast to this great opportunity eventually opening up there with Syracuse. And yeah, I mean, he knew Kyle McCord from when Kyle McCord was playing high school football up there in the Philly area. So that's where that connection originally started. It wasn't just some out of the blue sort of a deal. But yeah, that was a quick move, a very quick move that clearly caught a lot of people off guard, even those that thought he may even look at least, but just to jump right in was surprising, I think, for everybody to see that. So good for him. We'll see how Syracuse looks. They've got more interest now than they've had in I don't even know how many years, but several years. So that's a program to suddenly start paying a little bit of attention to if they can turn all the headlines into wins. And then Ohio State with Will Howard now, I mean, that's going to be interesting in its own right. He is, like Dan said, probably an upgrade with the legs, but I mean, how much is he actually going to be able to use those, and how much does that change what Ohio State does? That's the part we'll get to figure out here over these next few months and get to see eventually next fall. But certainly very interesting. I mean, just you wouldn't have pegged before the season started of Will Howard like preseason Big 12 Player of the Year hype, and then hey, like guess what? In about 9 months, he's going to be at Ohio State starting for them. Like what? But that's the college football world we live in. And you know what? Part of me doesn't love all the chaos because I just like want a day to go by where something's not like erupting, basically.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like that, as much as it maybe pushes against the traditional part of me, that is kind of cool though, and it's something definitely fun to talk about, and it's fascinating when you add up not that move, but all the moves together, these quarterback dominoes or whatever other dominoes. It is a very entertaining world that we live in with the transfer portal and these quarterback chips that move around. So yeah,
and I will say this: I saw Ralph Russo tweet this earlier. He said, I didn't think Bo Nix would do what he would do at Oregon.
Yeah, there you go.
He goes, I didn't think that Michael Penix to Washington was really that epic of a move. And he goes, I wondered if Jaden Daniels would even start at LSU. And there's 3 Heisman Trophy candidates and 3 of the best quarterbacks in the country this year. So sometimes, going to the new spot can unlock something in you that you weren't getting. And, I'll just use Bo Nix as the one example before we go to break here. He just wasn't getting coached the right way at Auburn. He just wasn't what Bo Nix needed, which didn't mean it was wrong, but it was wrong for Bo Nix. And then he went to Oregon, and he and Kenny Dillingham hook up. And then this year, of course, it was him and Will Stein. And then they found the Bo Nix in Bo Nix, and he became, this really fun quarterback to watch and a really, really awesome player. So, with Michael Penix Jr., it was just about being healthy, really.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing with him.
And then with Jaden Daniels, you want to talk about, and look, that Arizona State, that coaching staff is going to look back, and I'll give you 3 names that were there. Now, some of this is injuries, but they had Jaden Daniels, Johnny Wilson, and Ricky Pearsall on the same offense.
Crazy.
And all 3 of those guys went on to star at different schools, and all 3 of them will be in this year's NFL draft and be top 100 picks. So
the Herm Edwards legacy down there at Arizona State.
Yeah. So a Heisman Trophy winner, a guy who revolutionized who shot energy into Florida State where it wasn't before, and then Ricky Pearsall, who was a very bright spot in a very dim lighted swamp the last couple years.
He's 1,000-yard receiver.
Yeah, he's fantastic. He's an NFL receiver. Go watch Ricky Pearsall highlights and tell me if he doesn't wind up in the right spot, he's going to be an NFL stud.
Yeah, the Jaden Daniels thing, I almost forget sometimes throughout the season that he had come over from Arizona State. But, I mean, obviously it always hung in my mind that he was a transfer, but just the crumbling of Arizona State under Herm Edwards, I just kind of had blacked out of my mind. But when you put it the way that you put it, which I'm sure has been common discussion on their message boards, it makes it just so much worse to look at and think about. So, yeah, hopefully Kenny Dillingham can – get this thing on track. It was a up and down year this past year. They got a lot to figure out before they head into the Big 12. But, yeah, they had a huge talent exodus, and those guys went and thrived. And Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix and Michael Penix, I mean, he threw out a lot of different examples. I mean, that is a great point about, just all these chips moving around. So now we're going to see Dylan Gabriel at Oregon, and we're, on and on and on. And I do think as much as that can be kind of crazy to wrap your head around, it is fun, it is entertaining, and it does make, I think, for some better college football in a lot of cases, because you do have these more polished, older quarterbacks. For as much as I was saying at the beginning, you had like this logjam, it does also have its benefits, and it does have its positives, and that's certainly the stories that you mentioned there, I guess the bright spots of the transfer portal and the great stories that come out of it.
Absolutely. When we come back, Grayson Grudhay for Sick'em365.com. Portal visits galore to Waco in the last couple of weeks. We'll talk about who and what the prospects are next. This is 365 Sports.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, is your holiday item superstore. Half spiral hams, 8 to 10 pounds for $4.45 a pound. Pit hams, 12 pounds for $4.45 a pound. Bone-in hams, 18 to 22 pounds for $3.40 per pound. Whole raw turkeys from 12 to 16 pounds for $2.50 a pound. Whole smoked turkeys, that's smoked turkeys at 9 to 12 pounds for $3.75 a pound. And mini pit hams, 6 to 8 pounds for $5.99 a pound. And don't forget, they have full service butcher shop where you can find what you want: pork, poultry, seafood, and beef. And I bring up the beef because big beef tenderloin or a prime rib. Brian Bauer and the Bauer family, full service bakery with fresh baked kolaches every morning and bread and cold beer and wine. Tailgate needs from pellet fuel to charcoal. Waco Custom Marketplace and the holiday items, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
This is 365 Sports. Are you a Sikkim 365 superfan? Then try out our premium subscriptions at Sikkim365.com.
Welcome back, 365 Sports. Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak. Smokey, in case you've just joined us, been under the weather the last couple days. And fighting back, though. Fighting back hard. So much so that he went on a roller coaster today. He texted me this morning. He's like, man, I'm feeling great. I'm like, did you just take your medicine? I'm like, well, yeah. Okay. Talk to me in a couple hours.
Yeah,
He's like,
right.
yeah, it's wearing off. I'm like, he's going to keep doing that until you're not sick anymore. That's how medicine works. It fights until you're not done. But Grayson Grundhafer, Sikkim365.com recruiting analyst, joins us now. And Grayson, the portal shift in philosophy we knew was coming, but it has been dramatic in that I'll just take LeJontay Wester, a guy from FAU who is an absolute receptions machine. This is not really someone, even when they were like dipping into the portal the last couple years, that they would have even really kind of messed with. It was almost like that's not really what we're going for, but he's taking a visit to Waco. What are the chances for him to come to Waco, and who else has been here, and what do you see happening roster-wise out of these visits?
Right, Paul. So, I think that basically what we're seeing here is a shift in philosophy of two different kind of reasons, right? When you look at the NIL approach, which was something that really came to light towards the end of the year, just kind of what was happening there, how Baylor was kind of, not necessarily failing in that regard, but just not using it up to its potential. And I think Dave Aranda, Mac Rhodes, they found that out and fixed it, right? And so now I think you're seeing that side of it. And then I think on the other side of it, this approach with the roster and the management of the roster and the kind of prospects that you need to fill out the roster, right? And so you're starting to see them really attack the transfer portal in a much better way, much more effective way, while also having the NIL approach to back that. And so I think you're kind of seeing that all mesh together. And that's why I think Baylor's done a nice job, getting prospects on campus, getting some commitments early. I know a lot of people are mad about the numbers, as Baylor only has 3 transfer portal commits, but I think in general that's not looking deep enough into things, right? Because Baylor's taking a specific number of transfer portal visitors, and they've done a really nice job of landing the ones that they want and the ones that they've targeted and focused on. As we move forward, guys are still entering the transfer portal even right now, even though things have closed up. You saw Alabama kind of lose 11 guys yesterday. So there's still some moving parts there, and Baylor's still trying to work through that. But so far, I think they've done a nice job. Now, to answer your first question about LeJontay Wester, the Florida Atlantic wide receiver, this is a huge deal. The wide receiver position is one that Baylor is definitely focusing on. They've brought, I think there's 3 or 4. I think there's going to end up being 3 wide receiver official visitors over the weekend. So it's clear they're making that position a priority. And Wester, in my eyes, is kind of the guy that really stands out from that group. A really, really good prospect, all AAC first teamer, 5'11", 167 pounds, can play slot, can play outside, can do a lot of different things. But the production is what stands out. He had over 100 receptions this year. You don't see a lot of guys like that. He's currently rated as the number 37 overall player, according to On3. He's just a guy that, if Baylor lands, that would be just a massive addition out of the portal. But they got some major competition. He's, again, one of the best receivers in the portal. He's still going to take visits to Colorado, Florida State, most likely, and then I think Penn State as well. I think those are going to be his 3 remaining visits before he eventually makes a decision. But I think Baylor did about as well as they could have over the weekend with him.
Grayson, have you sensed, or what kind of changes have you sensed, if any, just differences as far as Jake Spavital, what he's looking for versus what they had on campus already and kind of what they were looking for with Jeff Grimes at the helm? And what kind of feels have you gotten, I guess, when it comes to his, actions in the recruiting market and kind of how he's pursued things?
Yeah, so specifically on the offensive side with, Coach Spavital and just the changes that have been made, on the offensive side, I think you're seeing they're really heavily recruiting the guard position on the offensive line, really trying to get bigger and stronger up front. And I think you've seen that a little bit when you kind of look at the guys that they're recruiting. Omar Egbedian, the commit that they got a week ago out of Montana State, 6'2", 324 pounds. Two other guys that they're recruiting, Kurt Daniker, he's like 334 pounds. Jacoby Jackson from Texas Tech, another big, 320, 325 pound guy. So it's very clear they're trying to get bigger and stronger up front. Not necessarily looking for guys who, were in that wide zone type scheme where you need a bunch of mobility. They're kind of looking for guys that are truly maulers up front and can move the line of scrimmage on every single play. And I think that fits into that downhill rushing attack that Jake Spavital mentioned when he was hired at Baylor. When they run the football up the middle, they don't want to be at risk for sitting there 2nd and 12. They want to make sure that it's at least, 2nd and 10 or 2nd and 8, while also having the opportunity to create some explosive runs as well up the middle. So that's the first part of it, bigger, stronger up front. And then the other part is wide receiver, right? They're clearly trying to upgrade that position. And when you move to more of an air raid type scheme, it's really, really important that not only do you have good wide receivers, but you have good slot receivers and you have experience in your wide receiving core in a kind of air raid or spread scheme. And I think you're seeing that with the guys that they're targeting, whether it's Ashton Hawkins at Texas State, who of course was coached by Jake Spavital in 2022, or Mikey Matthews at Utah, another wide receiver who's a slot type, 5'8", 180 pounds, had a really nice true freshman year there at Utah, and of course LeJonte Wester as well. So that's kind of his type, I would say, and that's the two things that I think we're seeing, that's really, really evident so far in the transfer portal.
Grayson, do you have any dark horse candidates you could see them looking at?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few. I think right now, though, the focus is very much on, guys who are, current that they have coming on visits. There's not a ton of moving parts. I would say, they definitely could look best player available type. So if you're talking defensive line, maybe they try to add one there. Maybe they look at the tight end position after losing Jake Roberts. Maybe they look for a guy that fits into the scheme a little bit better. And just brings, a little bit more of a diverse skill set as a receiver. I could see that being a route that they go, maybe even linebacker or safety. So there's positions out there. I think it really just comes down to, who enters the portal, right? As they look for best player available type, a lot of that's going to be dictated by the kind of prospects that actually do enter the portal, over the next few days. And even don't forget, there's another portal period after the spring. So lots of opportunities there as well.
Jared Anderson, the new tight ends coach, they finally and hopefully for a while have settled this coaching staff and now have this final piece with Jared Anderson. He's a Texas high school football guy, went to the same high school a few years after Jared did back in Tyler. Has been at TCU for a very long time now, Grayson, so very experienced in Texas and in the Big 12. But what are your thoughts on Jared Anderson completing this coaching staff?
Yeah, I think it's a good hire, and I think that Dave Aranda kind of has two routes to go with this hire. You could go with a young coach who you just bring in for recruiting purposes and is going to also be kind of an energetic, voice in the room, with the tight ends. I think that could have been one route to go. A guy that obviously has Texas ties, I think, was very important in the hire as well. But then the other side of it was you go with a veteran who has a lot of experience, coaching multiple different positions, recruiting multiple different positions, recruiting guys from, all over the state of Texas while also, again, having the Texas ties. And obviously, Dave Aranda went with that second option, and that's what Jared Anderson really fills. A lot of experience, a guy who you feel like is going to be very, very reliable and really help out with this offense in a variety of ways as Dave Aranda kind of takes this more hands-on approach on the defensive side. You want to have a lot of guys on the offensive staff who you really trust can get the job done. And I think that's exactly what you saw with Jared Anderson. I also think he's a pretty good recruiter as well. And so you put all that together, a guy with a lot of experience, he recruits well. I think it just fits kind of exactly what Dave Aranda was looking for. And in my eyes, that makes it a good hire.
Grayson Goudet for SicEm365.com. If you are not a premium member, you can do so. And hop onto the website and find out all this stuff that Grayson has. Very detailed post every week, every day, every time there's a new transfer or recruiting news. Grayson is on top of that. Grayson, thanks a lot. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, Grayson Grudhaver, Sikkim365.com recruiting analyst with us. When we come back, Josh Neighbors, Crystal Ball College Football Channel. That's one of ours. He is on the Big 12 Watch. We'll talk to him about what he thought about Texas's last day in the Big 12 as far as a football team and much more. This is 365 Sports.
Cars priced right, both day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
It's pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak.
Joined now here on 365 Sports by our good friend Josh Neighbors, host of the Big 12 Watch, Crystal Ball College Football Channel, another excellent channel that we feed with programming, including Josh's show and Garrett and Jack's show. College Chaos podcast is on that one as well. Josh, let's before we get into transfer portal and some of the guys out there and which teams you think are kind of intriguing in the Big 12, let's talk about Texas's last night as a Big 12 football team and the championship game that's coming up. But first, your thoughts on the end of the Texas era as a Big 12 football team.
Yeah. As for the game itself, it was a lot of fun. And obviously Washington, I mean, just they're so well coached. It's unbelievable. And Penix was awesome. And those receivers, the joke was out there on Twitter, like, is their receiving core better than Chiefs? I mean, there's an argument to be made. It actually is. I think that's actually something you could argue, but they were fantastic. And look, we knew, we even talked about it. I think we had as a group, if Washington or if Texas had their druthers, Washington was probably the last team they wanted to play, just because what Washington does well is what Texas does not do well, right? They don't cover very well. And I thought there were some times, guys, where the coverage was good and some throws just got put on, basically right in the money. We had a tip touchdown too. So yeah, what a fun game. And I also give Texas credit for hanging in there, just not going away. And honestly, like they've been the matador for most of the season. They usually have not been chasing. They were pretty good on the chase, right? They were not the better team in the first half. For parts of the second half, they were better. Washington they tightened up late, and Texas took advantage. If Quinn Ewers places that final throw in the right spot, we're having a different conversation here, which is crazy.
Josh, a lot of big announcements as far as the transfer portal and extra years of eligibility and all those types of things. And seventh year coming to Alan Bowman. He's returning to Stillwater, and they've got Ollie Gordon back. They've got various others on offense and defense that have proclaimed that they'll be coming back. It seems like the Cowboys are set up for a nice follow-up to making the Big 12 championship game this past season. But what are your thoughts on Bowman being back in the fold? And also, where are you when it comes to the glut of, seventh-year players that we now have in college football? Where do you kind of stand on the older player leanings that we now have in the sport?
Yeah, so I'm cool with the older part, I guess, but guys, so I just celebrated 4 years of being graduated from college. December of 2019 was when I graduated.
Congrats.
Alan Bowman was in college when I was a junior. Yeah. This guy was in college in 2018. I mean, that is absolutely crazy. I know he had an injury and whatnot, but at some point, get a job, man. Seriously, just go and get a job. Well, but here's the thing. If they're going to let you keep playing football, go ahead and keep playing football. So, that's what you should do. I think this one's super interesting. I'm kind of split down the middle on this one because to me, I'm not an Alan Bowman guy. I did not find his performance, the upside just is not there, right? He is a guy that is pretty good at not getting sacked, but it's not like he takes good care of the football. He can sling it around, but he's not an efficient thrower. I think it was 60% on the year. Threw 14 interceptions this year too. Was only sacked 7 times though. But look, when he came in as a starter, things went pretty well. He's not a guy that normally can bring you back when you're down. They were down times, they did come back, but Oklahoma State this year, they were a good team, but if they got kind of, if you started putting on a little bit, they were bad at responding. BYU game withstanding because BYU's not that good of a team. So UCF, which was decent, hammered them. They couldn't respond. Oklahoma State is bedlam, so it's kind of almost its own thing. And then Texas, that was not a close game either. So I think this probably speaks to the options that were there at quarterback available to them on the, in the building, in the portal, and also in recruiting. So it looked like they won a bunch of games with him. So, they did win, but their ceiling is not high. He's 24. So how much better is Alan Bowman going to get is kind of my point here. We kind of know what he is at this point.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised, and I wouldn't be shocked to see Oklahoma State, Josh, go after someone in the that just played a redshirt freshman year that might have been a high-star recruit somewhere else that's back in the portal to develop them behind Alan Bowman because those guys
cost, and we know the NIL side of things at Oklahoma State's kind of different, I guess.
Yeah, but because also Alan Bowman has, until last year, not exactly been the picture of health.
Yeah, right, exactly. He's had injuries. He sat behind guys, and then the injuries are why he's actually still playing at this point in time. Right, they need a backup plan, and to me, it's it's hard to find guys. Well, if Kansas can have a good backup plan, Oklahoma State can have a good backup plan. I don't know if Garrett Rangel, I haven't seen anything about Garrett Rangel in the portal. Obviously, we know Mike Gundy's son, Gunner, has entered the portal, which is, is interesting.
And he actually just announced he's committed to Ohio. That just came down at the last week. Yeah.
Exactly. So, this is the management of the quarterback situation in Stillwater has been just so bad the last year, because and it's good at one point when you pick Bowman, but the triangle offense that we ran, the 3 separate quarterbacks, was pretty awful for the first month. And that happened because what happened? Well, you chased off Spencer Sanders, who obviously that didn't work out for him, but in the beginning of the year, it didn't work out for Oklahoma State either. And I would say long-term, it didn't work out. That team was good. They coached him up well late, but if he's a quarterback, we're having a different conversation about 2023 Cowboys. I really believe that.
Yeah.
Josh, what do you think about Gary Bohannon, former Baylor quarterback, former USF quarterback? He's been dealing with injuries, but now headed to Provo to join BYU. Any thoughts on Gary Bohannon and the Cougs?
It's my job to have thoughts. I have very few about this. Okay. Gary is he is a quarterback, is what I will say. And that's kind of the deal with him. And look, he's actually had more success than Blake Shapen did, right? And I think Blake Shapen's a better quarterback than Gary is, but to Gary's credit, Gary kind of knew what his role was and played it very, very well. So BYU was obviously a situation where they needed something at quarterback. I wouldn't call him an upgrade, but this guy's been around. And once again, Alan Bowman's good, is proof. Hey, sometimes just having some experience matters. And it's a guy you can run with too, and you feel okay running with. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a multi-quarterback attack for the Cougs coming up next year.
Will Howard is now the quarterback at Ohio State. Josh, is he an upgrade over Kyle McCord? And if so, how much?
Yeah, so this is a great talking point right now. People are like, "Oh, it's the same thing over again." I think that's being said because he's a white guy with a decent arm. Mm-hmm. I honestly believe that. I really believe it's upgrade all. I've watched Will Howard the last 2 years, his entire career. I thought he started out and was not very good. I was like, this is not going to work. And then, as everybody said, he got older, he got more mature, he figured it out. And also, I think the problem that I'm having is people are not looking at what happened last year or in the 2022 season and the 2023 season. They had options on offense. And Will Howard's best quality was the fact that he could get the ball to every part of the field because he has an NFL arm, right? They could find guys in the flat. They could find guys the outside the numbers, outside the hashes, up the middle, everywhere. And they also had a really good complement of players. They had tight ends and H-backs and wide receivers and running backs who could all catch the ball. Well, this year, their receiving core was bad. That was not a good receiving core. You weren't worried about K-State wide receivers getting a ton of separation. Their best receiver was Phil Brooks. Was honestly more of he is a special teams guy. That's what he's mostly known for. And so to me, what I thought all year was Will Howard was being asked to put balls in pretty tight windows. I think K-State's offense is going to work better with Avery Johnson because it should be a rushing attack first. And that's kind of what creates space, elsewhere. It's like a good basketball player. It's like, hey, Dwayne Wade, we know he's going to drive. Somebody's going to have to help. And the help is what's going to start creating the movement. Pick your favorite driving basketball player. But that's kind of what I think K-State's offense is designed to be. And this year, a whole lot was on Will Howard to make tough throws, and he didn't always make them. But he tried to, and I think the receivers didn't help him out. So you give him Ohio State's weapons, I'm pretty confident they're going to be okay. Also, he is a much more mobile quarterback than Kyle McCord. You don't always have to run him, but he is a good, strong runner. He can finish runs. He is athletic. So to me, I'm not surprised. The NFL was there for him. And also too, I was at the Cotton Bowl, boys. That was, Ryan Day, his performance was horrific, number one. But those two quarterbacks just couldn't do anything for him. And I saw Bud Elliott say on Twitter, Will Howard made himself a lot of money. Yeah, he did. He made himself a lot of money because Will Howard is good. He's actually a championship level quarterback. We've seen him win one. You give him those kinds of weapons, I think it could be a lot better than what Kyle McCord was. I think and I don't feel like it was that close, to be honest. I think the conversation about it being close is odd and strange to me.
Josh, when it comes to the Big 12 bowl season, what kind of stood out to you? What results, or I guess even just the coolness of mayo being dumped on people's heads, or Pop-Tarts, or whatever? What were your takeaways from it?
So I think number one thing was for me was the 3 9-win teams, because it was all different. Kansas, with they're building a program right now, and depth killed them last year, and to have them this year win 9 games off the strength of their backup quarterback, and also have some really close losses with their third string quarterback. Guys, if I told you all 5-6 years ago, Kansas with a backup, you say 30-point loss, right? That's what we always say. That's not the case. And then I tell you Kansas with a third string, you're like, they have a third string ? And that was, they were close with Tech in that game. They were close with K-State with their third string. They won 9 games, and they had the preseason offensive player in the year in the conference go down and only play 3 games. I mean, that's how good that was. For K-State, Bill Snyder in his best days was averaging, 9, 10 wins, back-to-back 9-win seasons. That's really good. And I think they had 8 before that. So they went 8, 10, 9. They're averaging 9 wins per year over the last 3 years. That's what a winning program looks like. It was important for them with Avery Johnson to get that done. And then West Virginia, Neil Brown had to do something drastic, and I would argue 9 wins, pretty drastic, right? For him to go like that, for him to assume play calling, for them to be a good running team that takes those deep shots. I thought it all all 3 of those teams got 9 wins, and it all meant something different. So that was my favorite. And then, guys, the number one thing, Noah Fafita in the Alamo Bowl. And so I watched him all year. He's good. That dude is he's short, but besides that, you'd have to really stress to find something bad about him, because he can rip it. And they made the Mahomes pocket awareness comparison in the game. Oh, everybody's compared to Patrick Mahomes. No, the ability to understand when I have to move, how to create angles is the big thing. How do I create angles because I'm short to make the throws? He could rip it, guys, and he is going to be arguably preseason QB1 in the Big 12 next year.
Yeah, he's got a receiver that'll be up there for conversation about the best receiver in the Big 12 too. And so they're coming in pretty hot. I think nobody's changed the narrative or maybe drummed up more of excitement as far as making the move next year. I mean, Colorado was the big hey, it's Dion and all that, and Utah's had their proven. But, I mean, Arizona's now a team whose opinion from just when they were first announced to be joining the Big 12, I think has changed drastically, clearly more so than any other team. They're going to be somebody to contend with next year.
Yeah, and their defense was what was actually pretty good for them. So that they had to make the quarterback change from Delora to Fafita. But during kind of that period where they were playing a bunch of good teams, it was the defense for them that really stood out and was actually helping keep them competitive. And then Fafita kind of just went off from there. And I mean, they ripped off a bunch of wins in a row with him as the quarterback. And so you're like, this Jed Fish thing is really working out at Arizona. And they've got athletes all over the field. They rallied, they went down and, they were up and they were back down and they were back up again. But they've got a quarterback, they've got a coach, they've got skill players, and it seems like they've got a pretty decent defense, which I think is going to define much of the Big 12 next year. Is all right, who's going to be able to stop people? Who's going to actually have a defense that can stand up? I think that's why Arizona and Utah should be maybe 1 and 2 next year coming into the league.
Yeah, I think if you look at quarterbacks coming to the league next year, it's Fafita, Cam Rising coming back, and we'll see how healthy he is. But he's a gamer and a winner. We know that for sure. And then Shedeur Sanders coming in is really interesting, but we know he wasn't the issue at Colorado. It's everything that's got to be around Shedeur Sanders. And then at Arizona State, it's Jaden Rashada, who was the number one quarterback last year. So the 4 teams coming in, at least quarterback questions, really pretty much have them solved.
Yeah, I mean, the quarterbacks at the 4 incoming teams either have, Fafita took over unquestioned leader. Cam Rising is my age, at this point. So, and he's good. Shedeur is good. We know he's a good player. He's got his shortcomings, but yeah, I mean, it's a whole lot of, all right, what happens if people block for Shedeur is kind of the next big question, right? He's going to take too many risks. Great. But nobody blocked for him. So he had to do it all anyway. Right. So, and then Rashada, I mean, from a pedigree standpoint, who is as good as that guy? And also, the one thing about that team, they never quit. They were playing guys like me out there. It seemed like late in the season that were getting opportunities, and they never quit. And they rotated 8 quarterbacks, it felt like. But then you look at the actual like returning Big 12 teams. Who's the best returning Big 12 quarterback from like the Big 12 teams? I mean, Jalen Daniels is the answer, but also we can't just assume he's going to play because that's not been the reality for them the last 2 seasons. And then Avery Johnson's high talent, but we haven't seen him that much. Garrett Green is inefficient, but it looks like he's, so there's so many questions, but it's funny. There's not many questions with the new team's QBs.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Josh, your thoughts on Monday night, Michigan and Washington, who you got?
Probably Michigan. Sadly, like the Harbaugh interview bit is horrific. It's so bad where it's like, what color is the sky? And he's like, oh, how about our mascot? How nice is the mascot? Like he just refuses to answer any question, which is really frustrating. His dad, I mean, I thought his dad, they put, Jim in an aging machine and pulled out, Jim and Jack Harbaugh. I did not realize he looked just like him. That was crazy.
They have the same
I think
glasses.
It's them, though.
They wore the same glasses.
The hat too. They had like the M hat. Everybody said this. So I wonder what you all think. Everybody was like, yeah, Michigan was a better team against Alabama. I did not. That's not what I thought when watching the game. So I'm in the minority on this. That is not how I felt because Michigan had to pull their tails out of the fire there. And they had not been doing that offensively all year or all game. So like, Michigan being put in a spot where their offense had to do that, I don't know how you say they dominated a game in which their offense was asked to do something they haven't even done all year. That was kind of my thought on it.
Well,
not sure how you guys were.
Here's how I felt about the game. In that, if your argument was for Alabama to be the one of the 4 best, and you're basing it on a quarterback, then no. Although I do like Jalen Milroe, and I think his ceiling is really, really high, but he's inconsistent. And for Michigan, I do think that what Harbaugh has coached well enough is they are efficient. I mean, they are absolutely just
ruthless.
Ruthlessly efficient. And Alabama, for the first time ever, is not. And that's what got them in the end was the little things that Alabama used to do so well that Nick Saban harps on all year long. They were able to escape them. And Michigan took away the one thing they had that they used, which was Jalen Milroe's improvisational skills. He was not able to make things up, and I think that was the difference in the game.
I'm with you on that. I feel like they were starting to wear on them, but it was so simple, the things that Alabama was messing up. I mean, just taking care of that fumble was so bad. I mean, and the snapping is it's repetitive. And it's been a problem all year. And it's like, how is this stuff not fixed? And I mean, maybe it's one of those deals, hey, the better coach team won, sure. But Alabama had them dead to rights, it felt like, later in that game. Because my thing is, I'm not a McCarthy guy. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. And all credit to him. That's a legacy drive. But their entire offense is like, we don't put our quarterback in that spot. We don't make him make those throws. And Harbaugh being like, this guy's the best quarterback in history of college football. Guy threw 1 touchdown pass last 5 weeks. So can we all, please don't give me that. It's interesting with them, but I guess, I know it's interesting. Maybe they're just like Georgia. Maybe they actually are. Maybe it is whenever they're pressed, whenever the chips are down, this Michigan team is like, we have the answer. Maybe that's actually what it is. So maybe I'm wrong about this, the entire thing, but that's why I'm picking them to win the game. But I didn't, at least as far as the Rose Bowl went, I didn't come away being like, that's by far and away better than Bama. But I would pick Michigan, obviously, against Washington. It's going to be hard to repeat that performance Penix had and company had again. And also, they almost lost the game, even with that good performance. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Josh, always love having you on, buddy. We'll talk to you again next week.
See you guys.
All right, Josh Neighbors, Crystal Ball College Football Channel, host of the Big 12 Watch with us. And next, we are going to talk Oklahoma State and their 71-year-old quarterback, Alan Bowman, who's as soon as he's done is going to.
We got to stop picking on him already. I feel like we're already going to get the wet blanket and all those guys fired up eventually. If we keep talking down on Alan Bowman, he's not the only example, but it is silly. I mean, let's not call it what it is. It is silly that we're kind of in this space, but that is for a multitude of reasons, as we talked about earlier. The COVID year, the NIL part of things is certainly as big of a driving factor as any. Again, and he's a guy too. I'm glad I was able to shout out the degrees that he's going to have, because he's going to be able to go and make money. But hey, before I go into the business world with my masters and all this, why not make cool 6 figs or whatever it is from Oklahoma State alums first and play one more year of football. But yeah, it is going to be a running joke, to be sure. And Twitter had a field day with the announcement that he got the 7th year.
Scott Wright of the Daily Oklahoman is next. This is 365 Sports.
It's the Start Something New sales event at Allen Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat on the Loop in Waco, and also starting the 2024 kickoff. Outstanding year-end closeout deals last month. Huge savings on some of the most versatile and luxurious vehicles in the market now. 2023 Ram 1500 Laramie Crew Cab with $15,000 below MSRP or 2.9% for 72 months. Or how about the 2023 Ram 1500 Lone Star Crew Cab, $12,000 below MSRP or 2.9% for 72 months. And the Jeep deals will blow your mind. 2023 Gladiator Overland, $13,185 off MSRP, and every 2023 Gladiator gets 15% off MSRP. Amazingly hot deals include the Grand Cherokee, best-selling SUV ever, and all the 2023 models are 10% below MSRP. The 2023 Jeep Compass and Jeep Renegades are also 10% off and below MSRP. Don't wait too long. The incentives expire on January 16th, so you have a couple of weeks to do that. Inventory dwindling, time is running out, but what a great start to the year. Allen Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected. Get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
Welcome back, 365 Sports. Scott Wright of the Daily Oklahoman joins us now, and he covers Oklahoma State. Scott, Alan Bowman is back for a 7th year in college football. and another year with the Pokes. I was, I did a video, it's a short video, like an off-season recap, and I had foolishly assumed that Alan Bowman was just going to be done because he'd been playing for 6 years and moving on, and he got the waiver and came back. This is obviously plan A at quarterback for Oklahoma State. Is this the ideal situation for them, or was this just what they felt most comfortable with?
You look at what they're bringing back on this team, and particularly on offense. This is really, I think, the ideal scenario. Now, there are a lot of fans, just like there are at every program, who always think the backup quarterback or want to see what the young guy has, whichever hotshot recruit is next in line. And there are those people at Oklahoma State right now, but with a couple of exceptions, almost all the offensive line is back. And then you got a defense that's got a lot of returning starters and going to be making progress in Brian Nardo's second year as coordinator. This is a team that feels like they've got enough talent and enough experience to go and compete for a Big 12 title again next year and really be a better team than they were this season. So when you factor all of that in, being able to put a really solid and reliable player at the quarterback position, he's not flashy. He'll put up some big numbers from time to time, and he threw a few more interceptions than people would like with 14 in 14 games, but he's a really solid guy, a great leader for this team, and a really valuable asset in that quarterback position. Even if he's not going to go set the world on fire or make a ton of crazy throws or those sorts of things, he's just a guy that they can rely on and they know can run the offense the way it needs to be done on Saturdays.
Scott, what are your thoughts on the defensive side? Guys like Colin Oliver, Kendall Daniels coming back as well. I mean, it seems like they're, to your point, just kind of in general talking about everybody being back in the fold. But what does that mean for Brian Nardo and company and just getting into the groove defensively heading into next year?
Yeah, it's really big. We always hear coaches talk about players and the growth that they make from year one to year two. And I think we're going to see that with Brian Nardo as a defensive coordinator. He's been a coordinator for several years, but all at the Division II level. So after this year now, he has some, he's a very introspective guy, a guy that really enjoys self-scouting, and he is going to be locked in the film room, understanding where offenses were trying to attack him and where his breakdowns were in how he coordinated this defense for his first year at the Division I level. Now, then you add in, you mentioned Colin Oliver. This was his first year playing a stand-up linebacker role. He'd always been a defensive end, usually with hand on the ground, coming off the edge. They still used him off the edge, but he was standing up and doing some different things and playing a more traditional linebacker type of role. And Nick Martin was really the big surprise of this team, even compared to Ollie Gordon, who goes and wins the Doak Walker on the offensive side. Nick Martin, there was less known about him in preseason than there was Ollie Gordon. We thought Ollie had a chance to be a pretty talented player, having covered him. So Nick was a big surprise at middle linebacker, and then you look at guys like Kendall Daniels, who he's playing that middle safety, which is critically important in the 3-3-5 defense, and he had some growing pains and hit some moments where you could tell he was learning. So he should be past a lot of that next season. And at 6'4", 220, he is a really dangerous player in the middle of that defense and a talented playmaker. So many guys are coming back in that secondary that it really is going to feel very comfortable to the majority of the guys on the field. There's only a couple of spots where they're going to have to plug in some inexperienced or less experienced guys. So it's a really important off season for Brian Nardo to go into spring and be ready to make the changes necessary to take this team to the next level defensively next season, because he had a really good year. Even though his numbers don't necessarily show it, he was really good at adjusting in game. That was probably the biggest strength that he showed this season. But the overall package certainly needs to get better. They were, they were not a top 100 defense in the NCAA.
So with Gordon and Bowman and Oliver and Daniels and so on and so forth, where does that sort of leave them in terms of questions about the roster and guys making decisions? What's left out there, if anything?
Yeah, no, not a lot. There were a couple of guys that have super senior years available that haven't made public announcements. It sounds like both of those guys are going to be coming back. That's Corey Black at corner, which there was lots of speculation about where he might end up. Of course, with his little brother being recruited as heavily as he was, that they might try to play together for a year. All sorts of things. Yeah, Corey could probably still try to jump to the NFL at this point. I think he's got that kind of talent to be a draftable guy right now, but he might want to come back and finish it out. If he sticks around, that gives you a really strong corner on one side, and then some experienced guys that were kind of rotational players on the other corner. Trey Rucker, another safety that hasn't made any announcement about a super senior year. As far as filling holes, defensive end is going to be the big one. They're going to need to add a guy or two in the portal probably, and they've got a few offers out right now. And then outside linebacker, where Xavier Benson just finished up his eligibility. That's a spot they're going to have to find a new starter there, but they've got some guys that were in the rotation that they feel pretty comfortable with if they don't identify somebody who can really come in and be a difference maker. So, and then on the offensive side, really tight end, they landed one out of the portal today, a kid from Ohio. And other than that, the toughest thing on the offensive side of the ball is going to be finding somebody. They would like to get a veteran running back, but the guys, you're telling the guy, you're going to come in and back up the best running back in the country for a year at least. So it's going to be hard for them to go into the portal probably and get a guy who's, maybe only got a couple of years left to come in and be your backup running back.
Scott, quarterback wise, after Alan Bowman, he's not been the healthiest dude in his career overall, though he did make it through this year, which was great news for him and the program. What do they intend to do behind him? Because you see them going and getting a young guy that could step in 2025 to replace Alan Bowman, or are they happy with the guys on the roster?
They're really happy with the guys on the roster. The big question with the quarterback situation, as far as the young guys, will be answered in May when the portal opens again. Because with Alan Bowman's news not coming out until yesterday after the portal had closed, you wonder what that means for a guy like Garrett Rangel, who is he's going to be a redshirt sophomore, but he's the next oldest guy behind Bowman. He's the only other one with any college experience, and he's be going into his third season at Oklahoma State. He got to start a couple of games in 2022. Got a little bit of a taste of things. Does he want to go and test the portal? That'll be the question. Zane Flores is a guy who just redshirted this season as a freshman that they really like. Really excited about what he could be. But if he's getting impatient, he could be a guy that tries to explore something in the portal. They just signed Maya Milwaukee Smith, a really talented recruit out of Northern California that they really like. A big 6'4", 220-pound guy that. He's athletic, but not necessarily a running type guy, but more of a pocket passer who can move around a little bit. So, he's a guy that they feel like has some potential there as well. So they've got a trio of young guys that they really like and are really excited about. We'll just see who decides to stick around after they go through spring ball and kind of get an idea of where they stand.
So, Scott, they win their bowl game, get to 10 wins, second time in the last 3 years for the Cowboys. And, Gundy's now accomplished that multiple times throughout his long tenure there in Stillwater. That's obviously a big deal to get to 10 wins. That's a great mark. But what was it like to see them go and face A&M and knowing that, bowl games there's a lot of variables in play. You're not, facing everybody at their very best per se, but to see an old rival who's over there in the SEC now to finish with 10 wins by beating the Aggies, was much to do about that, and just kind of what was the feel about the bowl game itself and getting that win?
Yeah, there was a lot of stock put in that 10-win mark. That is a number, and obviously, when you have a season like this, you play 14 games, it certainly helps your odds of getting to 10, but it's still an important number. It only happened twice in Oklahoma State football history before Mike Gundy did it back in 2010. He's done it now 8 times since then. So it is an important number and was really valuable to this program. They were really concerned about going and getting that, and obviously the way bowl games have become, if you're not playing in the playoff, it's the bowl game is really kind of a springboard into next season and seeing what you've got. And, with so many guys that they either knew they were going to have back at that point of the game or thought they would, like with Bowman, it was really important to kind of have this launching pad into 2024 because they really have high hopes for what this group can do. We saw what they were capable of down the stretch in the season, and you add another year all together, and you have a chance to really do something special with this group. So it was an important game, and like you mentioned, Texas A&M. That used to be a huge game for Oklahoma State when it was a Big 12 game, especially in the Mike Gundy era. So really big deal and a really fun one down there in Houston, which is is starting to become an area that Oklahoma State's recruiting a little bit more. They kind of quit that whenever A&M left to the SEC, and but then once Houston was coming back into the league, then it changed their view a little bit of maybe going down there and trying to get some guys.
Scott, just out of curiosity, because that game was really controlled by Oklahoma State the whole time, but when A&M started to chip away and Marcel Reed started to get a little comfortable, was there a little nervousness in the pit of anyone's stomach that it could get weird?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. When particularly with Marcel Reed showing some of the skills that he did, and taking off and running. Obviously, Oklahoma State was not prepared for a running quarterback coming into that game. And he obviously hurt them a little bit there, but his consistency throwing the ball, you started to kind of look up and he's piling up some numbers and you're like, this Oklahoma State defense better figure some things out. And, they were able to do just enough to hold on. And, Ollie Gordon got going, got him a touchdown late and they were able to close it out. But you definitely felt like it could get a little bit crazy down the end.
Absolutely. Well, Scott, thank you so much for jumping on with us. Scott Wright of the Oklahoman. Appreciate the time, Scott. We'll talk to you again soon.
You bet. See you, fellas.
Scott Wright, the Oklahoman, with us. Yeah, Oklahoma State, it's interesting, Craig. We got some stuff to get to in the next segment news-wise, but it is interesting to see how comfortable they are bringing in, Alan Bowman back, in spite of the fact that, again, there's nothing spectacular about Alan Bowman. Like, he's not in that realm, but he was very steady for them this year and reliable.
I mean, look, you can't deny they got to the Big 12 championship game. They won 10 games. They beat A&M in their bowl game. I know that wasn't A&M at full strength, but it also wasn't a very good A&M team in general. So you beat the Aggies, which had to feel good and will look good in the history books because nobody will be debating, well, that technically they fired Jimbo, and then nobody's going to do that years from now. So, I think that they went out and had a really good season. You don't want to have 4 losses necessarily. You don't want to lose in the Big 12 title game for the second time in 3 years, but or is it 3 or 4 years now? Getting kind of far away from 2021. 4 years? Second time in 4 years or 3 years they've lost?
3 years.
3 years, okay. Yeah. I think there's definitely more upward mobility that's there for the taking, and Gundy believes that Alan Bowman's the guy to get them there, apparently, or their best option. And so I'll default to the guy who's given them 4 times as many 10-win seasons as they had in the entire history of the program before he got there. That's a stat that Scott just rattled off, but that's very impressive. I mean, twice before he got there, and 8 times now they've won 10 games or more. So I'll leave it to that guy who's been in 2 of the last 3 Big 12 title games to go forward with the best quarterback, especially being a quarterback, being a guy who knows the position and knows offense. I'll default to Mike Gundy on what's best for his football team. But, I did see a little bit of angst. I think it's sort of like the thing of Charlie Brewer won a lot of games here, but eventually people just got tired and wanted to move on to the young guy and the new fresh thing. And I think there's some element of Oklahoma State fans that are probably like, okay, that's great, but let's see the new young guy. And you're just going to have to wait a little while longer because Alan Bowman is their best option in their mind, and they're going to have a very experienced team going into next year, which should really give them a leg up on a lot of the other teams in the conference and put them in a really nice position heading into the 2024 season. So, a lot to unpack there, but things are shaping up pretty nicely with all the decisions that have been made for the Cowboys to just keep on running it back.
Yeah, absolutely. When we come back, a former Baylor assistant let go at Auburn. We'll get to that. We'll also talk about SMU and the college football playoff and not getting their money potentially in the what's probably going to be the new 5+7 model. And there's two sides of that, but it really does. If it comes out the way that it looks like it might, it's really going to suck for SMU, even though that they were fine with foregoing some money, but this was money they thought they were going to have.
Yeah.
So there's an interesting thing there, plus some other portal news and what Tailua Tagovailoa has to say about why he is petitioning for the extra year. This is 365 Sports.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
It was broad daylight. I stepped into a gas station for 5 minutes to grab a snack, and just like that, my car was broken into. They made out like a bandit. My laptop, my phone, everything. I called my agent to see what could be done, and he restored my faith in humanity. My claim was processed so quickly, and I was able to recover my losses.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow at GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
One more guest on the show today. It's coming at 5:30. Mickey Spagnola, DallasCowboys.com. And sometimes you'd rather be lucky than good. And I think that was the Cowboys last week, Saturday night. The way that that game ended wound up ending on a really weird call that didn't let the Lions win. And people will feel about how they feel about it, but worked out for the Cowboys. And then, waking up the next day, having your Wheaties and watching the NFL, and in spite of the terrible 2 weeks in a row, you wind up in first place. And if you beat a terrible Commanders team who would be stupid to win the game, stupid because if they win the game, they're going to fall out of the second pick in the draft. So they will probably rest a lot of guys. The Commanders will. If you beat a really bad Commanders team, you will be the number 2 seed in the NFC playoffs after kind of stumbling through the last part of the season. So we'll talk about that with Mickey at 5:30.
Sometimes you'd rather be lucky than good. I think they're a little bit of both. Certainly were last week. It was a little bit of both. I mean, the Lions should have won that game. But, all that unfolded the way that it did, and it ended the way that it did, and Dallas got the victory because the Lions didn't do what they were supposed to do by the rule book. And you can debate on, I saw him walk over to the official, but we didn't get, every little detail. And Dan Campbell saying, before the game, it's like you can't do that. You can't tell him before the game that the whole point is for the other team to be able to see the guy checking into the game. And so there was some tomfoolery going on there. Yeah. I don't think we got the clear story right away. We just got the massive reaction to it. And then you start to unpack it a little bit and you're like, maybe Detroit didn't do what they were supposed to actually do. But regardless, Dallas got the win, and it was a huge win, and Philly's falling apart, and it's all for their benefit. So, they're in a good spot.
The bottom line is Brad Allen announced the different number, and they heard him say that and then thought, we're going to try to sneak this by the Cowboys anyway. Mm-hmm. And then so instead of realizing oh crap, he thinks 70 is the eligible guy and not 68 or whatever it was, then they just were they try to get too sneaky as opposed to going, hey, whoa, we don't get a penalty here. Mm-hmm. It's not that. It's not that at all. So anyway, and he would if he would have taken a delay of game, he was still going for it because they went for it when they went 5 yards back. So that is really neither here nor there now at this point, but it's over and it's moved on. But we'll talk to Mickey about that because it was wild. All right, so Craig, first off, we'll do this in succession. We'll do Phil Montgomery, then Tailua, then we'll talk about the SMU thing. But Auburn and Hugh Freeze has let go of former Baylor offensive coordinator and former Tulsa head coach Philip Montgomery. He is available now. This is something I kind of always thought was going to happen. I didn't see Hugh Freeze, who calls every play, and Philip Montgomery, who's been used to calling every play for a long time, that being a long-term fix. Auburn wasn't good this year. They didn't have good offense. They didn't have good quarterback play. I don't think that's on Philip Montgomery because of, he wasn't exactly dealt a lush crop full of quarterbacks. He had to do the best with what he could. So he's out there, but there are some pretty interesting offensive and defensive coordinator candidates that don't have jobs right now that I think would be very intriguing. I personally would love, even though it's not going to happen because Kirk Ferentz doesn't believe in that kind of mad science, but if he would go to Iowa and bring that offense to the Hawkeyes, I would love to see that experiment of that offense and that defense trying to coexist. I would love it, but let's just face it, that's not going to happen. But I think it would be hilarious to see that kind of chemistry and see if it works.
Phil Montgomery's a good coach. He had a really good run here in Waco, and then got the job there as the head coach at Tulsa, had a pretty good run there, and just things eventually he was there long enough and had done enough and they'd seen enough to want to make a change and move in a different direction. But got the opportunity there at Auburn, and mixed results. Wasn't great. Wasn't setting the world on fire like you'd expect. Various reasons as to why that is, but he's back out there on the market, and it would be hilarious to see him go and sign up with the Hawkeyes and start running the old Baylor offense, the RG3 era offense. I know it's different in some ways from from years and years ago. It's nearly a decade ago at this point. But, yeah, I mean, I just hate to see that. He's a good man, and he was always very kind to us, and he's been on the show, various times throughout the years. And so I wish him the best on whatever he goes to next, but I don't think that this came as much of a shock. I don't think this was much of a surprise after the year that we saw.
I never thought it was a fit.
Yeah.
It just never seemed like a fit to me with a coach who, Hugh Freeze, is going to call his own plays.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's the kind of we were talking about yesterday with Venables and the defense of, his new coordinator is going to have his say and whatnot, but, the degrees to which Ted Roof was at fault versus Brent Venables, like, ultimately, you're the defensive coach of this team. And so, I mean, it's going to start and stop with Hugh Freeze offensively, but I can see where it seemed like a little bit of a weird fit, but it didn't work. It didn't work to the extent that they wanted it to work. It wasn't successful enough, and obviously they're trying to win now, win big, and they felt like it's better to move in a different direction. So best of luck to Philip Montgomery. Not shocked to see that after the year went the way that it did. I'm curious about Ron Roberts and just kind of how that fleshes out over time as well. But yeah, Hugh Freeze has huge expectations, and they took a big swing going and hiring him and bringing him back into the SEC from Liberty. So, we'll see on the defensive side of kind of how that continues to shape up, but not shocked about the fact that Auburn's moving on for Philip Montgomery.
Yeah, absolutely. So, no, he'll there are three guys that come to mind.
They've got a big quarterback recruit coming in, 5-star, and Walker White that'll be rolling into town. So.
Yeah, and probably Caden Salter as well. So they'll have those two guys. So it'll be interesting to see what Hugh Freeze does. He might do what Brent Venables did, which is hire a 30-year-old young guy that's on the rise, and then that way it makes more sense. Like if you're going to really kind of run that side of it, you need somebody who's going to be not maybe as much of a play caller at this point in their career. So that would seem to make sense to me. But there are three guys I think about, like Phil Montgomery on offense, Jim Leonard and Zach Arnett on defense, that I'm curious to see where they wind up, because those three guys will help out wherever they land. And so because they're excellent coordinators. And in Phil Montgomery, I think he's a good head coach. I think he could find that avenue again in his career, but we'll see where he winds up potentially as an offensive coordinator in the next year or so.
Yeah, and I gave Walker White an extra star. He's only a highly rated 4-star quarterback, so I don't want to just throw out 5 stars out there for him.
Well, now there's 5-star plus.
Yeah,
so
there's a 5-star. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
you're
so
right.
there's that. There's all these different things that they're throwing out there.
But we like Phil Montgomery, so best of luck. I mean, that's really the main takeaway for me is just I hate that it didn't work out there. Seemed very interesting at first that he would be the choice for Hugh Freeze taking over the Tigers, but it was pretty clear watching throughout the year that this was something that could happen. So. Good luck to him, and he'll land and be just fine somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Craig, you've got Tailua Tagovailoa's statement on why he is asking for another year, and it kind of boils down to 2 snaps he took in a game that his brother was injured in.
Yeah, but you know what? Something's changed in the time since then, because originally what I brought up to you was a tweet that Pete Thamel had out there, and it had a statement from Italia, and the reason that he was giving had to do with, let's see here. He had it a second ago, and now it's deleted. So there you go. That's why it's no longer in my bookmarks. But Thamel deleted a tweet that had a statement from Talia, and then I guess has now reworked it, and there's a new one. Here's the story on him entering the portal in his NCAA waiver request, which was filed Thursday. He played just 2 snaps in 2 games in 2019. A statement and tweet earlier indicated an inaccurate timeline of that 2019 season. So really the thing that I was pointing out to you was that he was citing his brother's injury, and basically he played more than he should have as far as the eligibility for that year. Like, you played too much, obviously, and you lose that red shirt. That he had played in I guess one extra game because he was trying to honor Tua and the injury that Tua had. Like, that was the gist of the reasoning as to why I guess he felt he should get a waiver, and now it's gone. It's disappeared. So I'll try to find if somebody screenshotted that. But that was what I was relaying to you, and now that's no longer the case. So they've, I guess, clarified on the new article from Pete Thamel, and it says that he's entered the portal. He told ESPN in a phone interview Friday he filed for a reinstatement waiver on Thursday. He played 5 seasons, including his freshman year at Alabama in 2019, which is the year he was talking about in his statement, which was in question.
4 snaps he played.
4 snaps. But the 2020 season doesn't count towards eligibility, which would have left him another year had he redshirted in 2019. But he played in 5 games as the third-string quarterback at Alabama in 2019. 2 snaps against Duke, 2 against Mississippi State. He played 22 snaps in the final week at Western Carolina, and the maximum threshold for redshirting is 4 games, but he played in 5. And so his whole thing was, I guess, that bonus game, like I said, his original statement was like, well, it was in honor of my brother and whatever. And so, he says, I guess, in the phone interview that the waiver request for adding back the year of eligibility stems from the circumstances around 2 games in which he played a total of 4 snaps. He entered a 38-7 blowout at Mississippi State as a way to honor his brother Tua, who suffered a severe hip injury during the game. So that's what he was citing. And so then Maryland filed the waiver, and it's now with the NCAA. But I guess Alabama, according to this, is doing what they can to, I guess, give him the good old, like, no, he should definitely get it, be all nice about it. But that seems like a pretty flimsy excuse. Like, if we're starting to go like, yeah, he went past the threshold, but he was honoring his brother who hurt his hip. I mean, I don't know, guys. I know it's kind of all free and open, but that doesn't really pass the smell test.
I agree with you. But let's face it, what reason matters anymore?
I know. But you got to have some sort of code.
Yeah,
a man's got to have a code. You got to have some sort of rules, and so that hopefully clears it up a little bit. That's the game he was citing where he played just a few snaps. He's honoring his brother, but it went past the threshold. He appeared in 5 games, not just the 4 that you can to maintain your red shirt. So, that's, I guess, part of his argument, and that's part of the timeline that's in play here is that 2019 season.
Yeah.
And that's what the NCAA will look at and, I guess, make their decision on what they elect to do next. But, I mean, I guess my question would be, what kind of a door does that open then all of a sudden? Because I only played special teams. I played 4 snaps in week 2, and that was 5 games, so I should have my 2021 season back. I mean, that's the thing that I think you may open Pandora's box with if you make this decision to give him the 6th year. But again, the sport we're covering here, who the heck knows what they might decide to do.
And they've already changed the rule to allow a bowl game to be a 5th game because now they have to. Like, you can't, if you said, well, these guys, all play in their 4 games and you get to a bowl game and you got 17 opt-outs, you're like, well, we need to, we can't. You want us to play in this bowl game or not? So that was how it was. So that might be an argument of what's the difference of a 5th game then or now? That's and I think the NCAA is just going to go whatever.
I don't know, man. I think that you risk like I said, I think you risk opening up how many other players to hey, I only played special teams in this game early on, and those were only 4 plays, and so give me my year back. I only played in 5 games. I mean, there's going to be, you would think, a number of possibilities of players citing, any number of reasons as to why that they would then deserve another year. So, I mean, you're right. I understand where you're coming from as far as the NCAA and probably just, hey, go ahead. Why not at this point? But I don't know. I'm a little bit more unsure about that. So, we'll see. It also makes you just kind of scratch your head of was nobody trying to think about this originally? When he was playing in these games of hey, you have a whole staff member, or if not numerous, that are keeping track of the games you're playing in. And I guess maybe the thought at one point in time was oh, well, you'll never need a 6th year, so who cares? Yeah. Is probably what the thought process.
That was before COVID happened. So
So who knows what the thought process was of oh, well, he's not going to be here for much more than 4 or 5 years anyways. This isn't a big deal to burn the red shirt, or somebody just should have been paying attention, I guess, closer to that. I don't know, but regardless, he's trying to get his 6th year. And that's his argument is just the number of snaps and the circumstances surrounding that. So we'll see what they do.
Yeah. All right. So let's take this break, and then we'll come back and talk about SMU after that, because I think it's going to take a little longer, and this will keep us on schedule to get to Mickey at 5:30. But we'll talk about SMU and their potential landmine financially when it comes to the CFP and added revenue when we come back. This is 365 Sports.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Ben Erlinson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Ben Erlinson, 100 North 6th Street in Waco, 254-759-8533. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Did you know that 1 out of every 4 men have symptomatic low levels of testosterone and don't even know it? And if you think you're too young to worry about it, guess again. Low T levels can make you feel tired and grumpy, raise your cholesterol, and cause weight gain. Petty Clinic Low T can set up same-day blood screening and results. So if you're tired of being tired, call or go online at pettycliniclowt.com. It's a private clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Affordable, only $165 a month, including lab work, office consultation, testosterone injections, and follow-up visits, compared to $300 or more a month in Dallas or Austin, and you don't have to drive 90 miles one way or the other and fight the traffic. Petty Clinic Low T has board-certified physician consultations and will provide the best form of brand-strength testosterone. Contact Petty Clinic Low T for increased energy, improvement in sexual desire and performance, mood, concentration, even a decrease in body and belly fat. Just off Highway 84 and Old Hewitt Drive in Woodway, pettycliniclowt.com.
Cars priced right, day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Ben Erlinson, who'll navigate you through today's financial climate. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak.
Welcome back. Final hour here, 365 Sports. Biggie Spagnola comes up in the next segment to talk a little Cowboys with us. Craig, I mentioned this about SMU. We've been teasing it for the majority of the show. But with its move to the SEC, and this is from Ross Dellinger from Yahoo, SMU expected to get a full $6 million annual payout from the CFP like the other Power 5 schools. However, CFP leaders are meeting Monday in Houston. That's in question, and he has a fantastic article on very in-depth about G5 to P5 moves and how it works. So to put this in a very simple nutshell.
Please do, because I have a hard time explaining it simply.
It's complicated, but for everybody to get for a school to get a full payout, it has to be a unanimous choice by everyone to say, yes, this school is now part of the big money schools. We're going to give them this money. So SMU, when they joined the ACC, while foregoing the television revenue, fully expected this $6 million to be part of their budget every year. Now, I doubt that this is going to make them change their mind. It's not, but it has brought up an interesting question. Greg Sankey is kind of the one leading this charge of, look, the more people we let in, the more we share this money. And he said it in the most politically, straightforward way he could, but he's like, that's really not the business we're in right now. And so you get into, this is the line drawing in the sand more of the haves and have-nots and who they want to let into this group. And, look, outside of Oregon State and Washington State, the Power Five, as far as the number of schools, is not smaller. Like, those are the two schools that are out, but there are now 5 more schools that are in. So you're still +3 in adding Power 5 schools when you talk about the 4 Big 12 schools that were not in the Power 5 and now are, and SMU that joined the ACC. So while getting rid of the Pac-12 was at least maybe initially thought to render some schools out of the Power 5, maybe as many as 4. Well, that didn't happen, and then one more came over with them at SMU. So now it's a very interesting situation of, is SMU going to get this money? It does seem, with all the money going around, giving $6 million to SMU doesn't seem to be that big of a deal, but I do think that SMU is being put in the position of being the sacrificial lamb for the schools that don't want to add anybody more into the college football playoff pie.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty clear way of explaining everything. And so, what's in debate now is how much SMU is actually going to receive, depending on which way this sways. And I think this was something that was bubbling up because I was very curious about one particular thing during the entire realignment saga, whatever chapter this is, that we really do we feel like we ended a chapter with the Pac and the ACC and now we start a new one now?
Yeah.
I mean, does that feel fair? Because that was like a whole saga with the Pac and just I think they have their own chapter, right? So when all that dust settled, I was curious as well about one particular thing, and that was for all this talk about the Power 2 or all this talk about consolidation, how are we adding more teams?
Mm-hmm.
If we're consolidating and the group's getting more exclusive, then how is SMU now a Power 5 team and BYU is now a Power 5 team and this, Cincinnati's now a Power. So there's more power schools than there was before what was supposed to be consolidation and realignment, and that just never really made sense to me. So I was just curious how it was going to continue to work. Well, here's your answer, Paul, is that they're trying to slim it down even more so. And so now SMU is in question about whether or not they will be able to get that money. And this was something that the Big 12 ran into, and they had this issue when it came up with their new schools that came in, but it was voted on that, they would be able to go ahead and get those shares. And so now that you're finally starting to see that stop sign pop up from those wanting to see where all the money goes and where all the money's going to be going moving forward, of saying, wait a second, hold on, we're not just going to be giving this out to anybody. So it's quite the predicament that SMU could find itself in. Now this comes from Ross Dellinger, and a lot of what is passed along to him eventually, becomes a pretty big talking point, and certainly from an SMU perspective, this is a huge talking point, but it points out that schools in the past that made the jump from the G5 to Power 5 also saw a leap in their distribution from the CFP. The difference in annual payout between G5 teams, $1 million, and P5 teams, $6 million, is substantial. That's a $5 million difference, and when you take into account that SMU's forgoing their TV revenue, I know they got more money than God, but eventually, you need some money coming in, buddy.
Yeah, you want somebody to send you a check.
And especially when you were banking on, okay, well, we're not going to get the conference distribution, but at least we'll get this share of the playoff money. So that's $5 million more than we were getting originally. So, hey, that'll help offset some of this.
And part of it was, look, they only had like a $10 million a year television contract as it was.
Yes.
So in their minds, and when we talked to Rick Hart about this, he was on the show, I remember asking, I said, so for clarification for people who are going, oh my God, you're foregoing $40 million a year or whatever it is. He said, well, we don't really look at it that way. We look at it as we're foregoing 10 because that's what we were getting or whatever it was. Like they weren't getting that much. So, we only really have to with the resources we have allocated to the program, we really don't have to make up that much money right now because we've got donors that are willing to do that. But in their mind, they weren't really foregoing 10 or 12 or whatever it was, or 9. I don't know what the distribution was. They were foregoing whatever it was -6. So like, or +6. So like they were going to make it up, so they thought that like, okay, the gap will be a little bit smaller and we'll have some of this operational money, but now that may not necessarily be the case. Now, they'll probably wind up getting something out of this, I would think, because the move has been made, and they'll have plenty of advocates that will say, like, hey, let's not get too crazy here about...
Well, Sankey says you have to have a unanimous vote.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of politics and various things involved there.
But this is also Premier Sankey, Kim Jong-Sankey, sending out his message of, look, I'm not just going to let... Like, I've been... he's telling the world his message. Look, the SEC is all that matters. I've been out here saying that the SEC is the only one that matters. So I'm not just going to let anybody come in and get the same money as the SEC is going to get. And that is the hill he's going to fight on for,
And if he was doing that before, I don't really fault him when he's suddenly like, okay, so now SMU is now sharing the same money. And not just don't want to pick on the ponies here, but I do think if you're Greg Sankey and this is all heading a certain direction, all of a sudden there's more Power 5 teams than there were before, and there's still technically the same number of conferences, although the Pac-12 is like very much in just no man's land at this point, but until they don't exist, they exist. Like there's still that to kind of figure out as well how all that works. And so this is a couple of years of an issue, though. This isn't like a forever thing because we know that they're working already on the next round of whatever the CFP contract is going to look like and the distribution model for their coming up in 2026 and whatever the playoffs going to look like. That's all still very much coming down the track. So this is just for the next couple of years. But, when you are SMU and you've already made this sacrifice to not accept TV revenue as a way to join the ACC, and you're expecting these payouts to be there and offset some of your spending, like at some point, like, yeah, you do need money coming in. And so this would be money that you were expecting that's suddenly not there, and how problematic that could be. Well, it points out without the CFP, SMU's first 9 years in the ACC may generate annually roughly half of what it earned in distribution while in the AAC. So that right there is where you're like, whoa, as first 9 years in the ACC may generate annually roughly half of what SMU earned in distribution while in the American. So that was part of making that deal. They got themselves a spot in the club, but it's like, how much longer is the club open? Like, what happens with the ACC? Like, so if you're SMU, these last few weeks, man, have had to have been just mind-numbingly crazy in terms of just what conference you're in and what that's going to look like and whether or not you are going to be at the table that you thought you were going to be at when you first had that announcement made that you were joining the ACC, because it's not 4 months later what it looked like when you first joined. Like, there's been all this other Florida State, hand-wringing, and now you're hearing all of the North Carolina or the Big Ten or all the other movement that's possible with the typical schools that are mentioned. That's all gone on. They haven't even stepped foot in the conference yet. And now you're looking at potentially not getting the money that you thought you might be getting. And again, they're richer than most out there. But at some point, you do need some you were, I'm assuming banking on some of these millions of dollars that were extra money and the part of the big pull of being in the ACC. That's no longer looking like it'll be the case. So, yeah, that was a very interesting nugget to drop earlier today. And it just makes sense because, again, if you're consolidating and you're shrinking and it's moving towards this whole new idea of what the power conferences look like and anything, it just puzzled me. Okay, SMU, that's fine. Okay, that's one team. The Big 12 added Cincinnati and Houston and UCF and BYU. But the CFP voted to continue to give them the same payments. But now they're saying no. That's the basic deal with this. Now they're saying, all right, no. Now we don't necessarily want to continue doing that and adding more mouse to the table than what was there originally, when the whole idea is to make the table a bit more exclusive. So that's a battle that's looming and a war that's looming, and this will be a fascinating case to follow as far as how that works for SMU here over these next couple of years and what they may decide to do as far as that goes. And then you've got, here in a couple of years, or in these next couple of years, they're going to be renegotiating the new contract with...
Which is what probably scares schools like SMU a little bit more, because if they're the message, if they're the, if they're the mafia, like, we're going to do this to send a message and hopefully to, let everybody know what it's going to be, then if SMU is going to be like that, then there's going to be a lot of other schools that are like, well, what is really going to be the plan here?
Yeah, I mean, because it did get a little crazy with the ACC too, and I guess the Pac to a lesser extent, but this was the Pac when they were trying to survive. But if you're looking at the Pac and they're going to rebuild, right? Mm-hmm. Who are they going to go rebuild with? And the CFP is just going to sign off of San Diego State, sure, and New Mexico, come on, and UNLV and Oregon State, Washington State, you were already here, but that doesn't sound like what they're going to be to do.
It sounds like they're basically telling those schools.
You're not going to get the same piece of the pie that even if you have the Pac-12 name, you're not going to be treated like the old Pac-12 on equal footing with the rest of them. It's kind of the message that I would be getting if I were those schools. And so when the ACC was adding SMU, it's like, okay, Cal and Stanford, they're already Power 5, I get that. But then when you started to see, well, what's next? Let's get Rice. And I know some of that's just realignment, just talk, and that's just, fantasy booking and whatever on social media or on websites or whatever. But I was sitting there scratching my head of wait, now Tulane's going to join the party and Rice and how many teams are we adding here to the quote-unquote power leagues? Because there's not they're not going to want to do that.
Yeah.
You're not just going to be able to add. The whole point is that it's separating is the idea. And so, yeah, that never added up to me. The whole idea of just filling in, adding. And so, yeah, it looks like this is going to be kind of the line drawn in the sand potentially. If, in fact, the CFP does decide to not give SMU the Power 5 payout. And so we'll see. Maybe things change and this isn't the case, but if they do, as Ross points out in his article, the association would basically, if they denied SMU Power 5 funding, the association sets a moratorium on additional revenue for those schools elevated from G5 to Power 5, a policy likely to even span into a new CFP contract starting in 2026. The move is yet another sign that college leaders are attempting to restrict D1's highest body from further expansion. And so that's the message being sent is no, we're not going to add all these new teams to the Pac and the ACC or the Big 12 and keep giving them the same payouts. So if you're Cincinnati and Houston and BYU and
you got in under the wire.
You got in right in time, basically. I mean, I think you were maybe the last on the lifeboat, or maybe. Yeah, I guess you would have been because SMU would have been the last G5.
Look, Stanford and Cal are only not having this problem because they were already there.
Yeah, they were already in the club, basically. Yeah. So, but yeah, SMU was the last person to get into the club before they changed the rules of entry, basically. But now they're saying, I don't know, we got to review the film. You might have got in a second too late. We got to convene on this.
Yeah.
But, if you're any of those other schools, and I don't say this happily at all, but if you are UNLV and Boise State and Rice, and I don't know how much serious Rice was. That was the whole academic idea, I guess, of what you could look at. But Tulane.
Memphis.
Name the teams that have all been mentioned throughout. This is not a good day for you if this is what is going to happen with SMU.
Well, and look, even if they keep they're going to have the 5+7 model and the group of 5 team is going to get in, they're basically also telling you that even when we renegotiate this deal, you're not getting that much more money. You're just lucky to be here. So even if we let you in the next iteration of this, that's just going to be how it is. You're not getting.
Yeah, there's 8 more teams, but you still have one spot basically.
Yeah, and that one spot is the same value.
Yeah.
You're still getting, this is the congratulations, you won the claw machine kind of a grab here of this. And, trying to rebuild the Pac-12, the way I think of that and the way that they're looking at it is, do you guys remember Orange Julius? In the mall, there used to be the Orange Julius?
Yeah.
Okay, you can still get an Orange Julius.
What's the mall?
Yeah, for real. Another point. But you used to be able to go to the mall, you get an Orange Julius. Now, if you want an Orange Julius, you have to go to a Dairy Queen. That is what the Pac-12 is now. They still have Orange Julius, but it's in another thing, and it's not really its own deal anymore.
Yeah, it's not quite the same that it was. Nobody can deny that. It's a shell of what it was because there's only 2 teams still standing, and that's not a knock on the 2. It's just that's a fact. If you lose 10 teams, you're not what you were when you were 12 teams. And so, yeah, that's a situation still fleshing itself out. They've come to a couple of arrangements already. They have some other sports they still need to be able to find landing spots for. I know that Brian on our boards has said that, they're still – I know it was one of the ADs recently just mentioned they're still talking to the Big 12. They're talking to the ACC. It was obviously either Oregon State or I think it might have been Oregon State's AD. I said this here recently, that they're still having discussions with those conferences, and so that continues on, and you don't know what that looks like at the end, but that could be just, hey, Oregon State baseball joins the Big 12 this year, and then they you know what? They're a top 10 baseball team, so I wouldn't be opposed to that. But obviously for the next couple of years, there's not going to be this, everybody jumps on board all at the same time, but they're still working their way through that. And now, beyond that, I mean, who the heck knows what the future really holds. And so, yeah, this is all very interesting as we know we're moving towards this new era. We know that the consolidation is a real thing. We know that realignment's not really over, but we don't also know that it's going to be as what it was this last time around. Like, how much more chaotic could it be? And I know there's a lot of college football fans that fear the haves and the have-nots and it really being something completely separate. I don't know, but we're about to find out here in the next couple of years. That's where all this is going to finally get settled. And by the time 2026 rolls around, when they get to where the new whatever it is, whatever that CFP looks like, whatever the arrangements look like, that's not far away now at this point, and that will be a whole new world of college football potentially. It certainly has turned into that in the last couple of years. But, yeah, not a great day for SMU potentially because it's not officially voted on. And if it does go through where they don't get that CFP funding, then that would be a really bad day for a lot of those schools that are clamoring to get a spot on, however many ships you feel like are still out there floating.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this is going to – and it usually things happen kind of slowly when it comes to a reorganization, but everything else has happened so fast. Yeah. I honestly think in 2026, 2027, we're going to be like, oh, wow. Well, I mean, it's going to be really different.
And they're not going to just sit there and say in 2026, like, hey, by the way, here's our new playoff. And, there's going to be some negotiations, some back and forth. There's going to be a lot of opinions over the next couple of years and a lot of agendas and a lot of different angles to look at. And so, yeah, it's a crazy time that just continues to get crazier and crazier, and this adds a little fuel to the whole separation fire that people either love the idea of because you're probably like an Ohio State fan or something, and like, hey, no matter what, I'm in the club. And then if you're majority of the other teams, you're like, oh God, where is this going? Because this is going to have an effect on us as well. I mean, it's going to have an effect on everybody, but like, just how exclusive are we talking? What are we talking? That remains to be seen. But yeah, this is definitely an interesting story to follow here with SMU and these CFP payouts.
Yeah, absolutely. When we come back, Mickey Spagnola, DallasCowboys.com. Lucky and good? Well, they were both last week. This is 365 Sports.
Samantha Duvall, TexasBeefHouse.com, farm-raised Wagyu beef, and of course it is spectacular. We've discussed it all the time, and you were right. Back when you had that online auction that went so incredibly well, that live auction too, that you were going to have more and more of them, and you've got one again scheduled for the end of the month.
Yeah, so we've got another live auction, so it'll be in person or you can bid online. Coming on Tuesday, January 30th. We're going to have dinner beforehand at 5 o'clock. We're going to have smash burgers. We're also going to have some of our steaks for steak tasting. That way you can taste test it and then bid on it. And then the auction will start at 6:15. So you'll be able to bid at our place in person here in Tyler, Texas, or you can bid online at cci.live.
Tuesday, January 30th.
And don't forget, you can also use the code SICK'EM10 for 10% off your order.
Where is the best beef in Texas? Your house. When you ordered from Texas Beef House, unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu from our pasture to your plate at TexasBeefHouse.com.
Drive into the new year with confidence and excitement during the Start Something New sales event at Allen Samuels in Waco. Get incredible deals on our entire selection of new Ram trucks, Jeeps, SUVs, Chrysler sedans, or a sporty Dodge. Get more for less guaranteed. More value, more selection, more service, more trade-in allowance, and even more competitive financing. Hurry in and start 2024 with a bang. Shop the greatest selection of inventory in Central Texas at Allen Samuels in Waco. In-store or online at AllenSamuelsDCJ.com and make it unforgettable.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency easy. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers. And you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears!
Looking to connect with Baylor alums in your area? Baylor Alumni can help. Looking to host a watch party in your city? Baylor Alumni can get you started. Want to step out in your community and serve with other alums? Baylor Alumni is your connection with the university and each other. Let's get started. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Mickey Spagnola, DallasCowboys.com. Joins us now on 365 Sports, and I did have to take that call on the fly because he called back as soon as the music was playing. So excellent timing, Mickey. And last week was a great intersection of sometimes you'd rather be lucky than good, but they were good and lucky at the same time, given a very bizarre call that happened, although a legitimate one at the end of the Lions game. And then you wake up on Sunday after having won and kept pace in the playoff hunt, and the Eagles lose, and all you have to do is beat Washington this week, who it doesn't really benefit them to win. Because it would maybe hurt their draft status. So this has been kind of a good couple weeks for the Cowboys after some struggles in Buffalo and Miami.
Yeah. I assume you're speaking of lucky that the Eagles got beat.
Yes.
Not that the Cowboys won.
No, they were good. Like, I think they were good against the Lions. Yeah.
And that was on the Lions' fault.
Yeah. No. No.
If they're going to use a deceptive play, don't fake out everybody and the officials and yourself, right?
Yes. They got too deep in the plan.
Well, just do what you're supposed to do and have everybody report the way they're supposed to report. And on top of that, don't cover up the guys that are eligible. Yeah. So there was really 2 penalties on the play, right? Mm-hmm. You only could assess one. But they had a legal formation, and they threw the ball to a guy that wasn't eligible to catch it. But other than that, it was great.
Yeah, it was well drawn up. You know, the thing that gets me about when people are saying, well, this wasn't fair to the Lions, look, even all that you said, Brad Allen got on the microphone and said, this is the number that's eligible, and the other guy caught the pass. So they heard him say that, and then they didn't go out there and go, well, 68.
No, that was my fault. I mean, my deal on it. It's like, why didn't you call timeout if you knew, well, I guess they were out of timeouts by then. Well, I would have ran on the field and go, no, you announced the wrong guy. And see, and the other part of it is there's this assumption that you would have got the same result if you announced him as being eligible, right? Well, if the Cowboys knew he was eligible, they would have fixed their defense to make sure they account for the guy that was eligible. So, too bad for all the people in Detroit that are putting up billboards that basically saying that they got screwed. They screwed themselves.
Yeah, they really did. No, they really did. And it was very bizarre, although all the way that went down. And then to have Dan Campbell have two other opportunities at it and not try to go for overtime, again, that was really surprising to me too.
Well, and that's on him. So the Cowboys weren't lucky about that. Because even though Micah Parsons jumped into the neutral zone on the second one, they did intercept the pass, so they stopped the play, and Micah in the neutral zone had nothing to do with the interception. So they failed there, and then they failed on the third one, too.
Yeah. So, Mickey, the Eagles lose, and they're in a very odd free fall right now. They my theory is that the new coordinators haven't adjusted as much, and the league's maybe caught up to them a little bit. And when it comes to scheme, I don't think it's certainly a talent issue or anything like that, but they've maybe been figured out a little bit. While still a good team, they're just not playing their best right now. And the Cowboys stare down a Commanders team that, I know that you can't tell the players not to play to win, but it behooves them none to win the game, really.
Well, and then today they put a bunch of guys on injured reserve, right? I think three of them were their starters on defense, which wasn't very good to start with. And then the other guy, I don't think they put Jonathan Allen on injured reserve, but they ruled him out. I don't think – look, the players want to win. Anybody that competes and gets in a game wants to win. They don't want to embarrass themselves. But I think from the franchise standpoint, they just assume to lose the game and try to lock up the second pick in the NFL draft, where they are right now by one game, because if there's a tiebreaker, it goes by who played the least hard strength of schedule. And right now, they're one game ahead of New England in that category.
So, Mickey, I know that there have been some things that have been problematic. The run game hasn't been exactly what they've wanted, and they've had some injuries there. I know Deuce Vaughn is injured now, but it looks like Rico Dowdle is coming back. The linebacker position has been kind of an issue. How do you think they address that those two things going forward into the postseason?
Well, I think they're okay at running back. They're going to be what you had all season, right? Mm-hmm. You got Tony Pollard, you got Rico Dowdle, Hunter Lepke, and if they get into the playoffs, when they get into the playoffs, they'll get an extra elevation, so Malik Davis can be moved up if you need another running back. Deuce Vaughn on IR is not going to hurt him one bit. He hasn't been active because he can't, as a third running back, he can't give him anything on special teams if he's not returning. So I don't worry about that. Now, the linebacker thing's a different story. You are what you are at this point, and I don't know how you fix anything. Signing Damian Wilson to the practice squad gives them some experience. I don't know how quickly he could be ready to play. Same thing with La'el Collins on the offensive line, since the Thursday was the first time he's practiced in over a year, or almost a year, when he tore his ACL in January. So I think it's experience, it's the depth if you really need something. But I don't know that either one of them can make a huge difference at this point.
Do you think La'el Collins has maybe a longer-term future coming back to the Cowboys next season?
Oh, I think that depends on kind of what they see in practice of him over the next couple weeks. And it also depends on, a money factor. How little is he willing to play for? Now, if he looks like he's got it, and remember, there was a reason why they let him go into free agency and eat about, I want to say, $14 million, because, he cost them $8 million in dead money this year for that release. So they thought that Terrence Steele had outplayed him, and they'd rather pay the young guy than the veteran who had been having injury problems, and he continued to have injury problems, tearing the ACL when he was with Cincinnati. So I think that one is. I don't know if they've even thought of that, but on the practice squad, unless you're elevated, you're only making $12,000 a week. Betty doesn't want to play for that.
No, I'm sure he does. I'm just, I'm just curious as to, especially with some moving parts in free agency in the offensive line, if they can get a guy, if he can be good again, it'd be interesting to me. And I know he's a guy who loved being a Dallas Cowboy.
Oh yeah, and he loves being back. But again, I bet he loves money more.
Yes. Yeah, I think we all do. Mickey, you were there. You got to see the Jimmy Ring of Honor ceremony. More than anything to me, it just feels like a gigantic weight has been lifted off of a lot of people when it comes to that. And a guy who won 2 Super Bowls and made the franchise what it still is, in the new era of the Cowboys today, in this rightful spot in the Ring of Honor.
Yeah, and it was always going to happen. I think it was a matter of time, of when, and I think for more than anything, it was more cathartic for the fans. I think it was a neat thing for them to see, for them to have an opportunity to honor Jimmy Johnson, because they really, from a fan standpoint, never got a chance to thank him. The breakup happened in the off season. There was a press conference, but there was nothing for the fans to thank Jimmy for resurrecting the franchise from 89 through 93 during his 5 years. So I think they enjoyed it so much, and Jimmy did a nice job of playing to the fans, to the crowd. He treated the media awfully well, shaking hands with all of us, and it just kind of brought back good memories. Not the bad one, as I think maybe some people wanted to look at it as, but the good memories. And we always talk about places that have been so successful waking up the ghosts. Well, he woke up all the ghosts and made people, realize how good the Cowboys were there in the early to mid 90s.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, Mickey, I'm a lifelong Red Sox fan. I very much believe in curses. So if the Cowboys ever had one, this might have been it.
Well, we'll find out real quickly here,
yeah.
Right?
Look, I was all about them getting that piano out of the lake that Babe Ruth sank, like whatever it took for the Red Sox to win a World Series when they finally did. I mean, part of it is just changing organizational philosophy that's not working for a long time, and the Cowboys haven't really had that problem. It's just they always seem to have like one little hole that kind of undoes them at the end of the year that they haven't addressed the right way. But Mickey, how huge would it be for the Cowboys to get that first playoff game at home, a place they have not lost this year, and to avoid San Francisco for as long as possible?
Yeah, I think that, if you can get the number 2 seed, then you're guaranteed a home playoff game. If you win, you get another home playoff game. And we all recognize they've been 8-0 at home, although maybe the home schedule hasn't been as difficult as the road schedule has been. And I think some of those road losses, I don't think it had anything to do with being on the road. I think it had something to do with who you were playing on the road, because they didn't lose to anybody on the road that with less than 10. Well, only one of the 5 losses, right? All the other 4 losses were to teams with at least 10 victories. And a couple of them are division winners, right? Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like they lost the Little Sisters of the Poor. But again, they were able to have a couple good home wins, and playing at home certainly helps in the playoffs. And if you think about it, when the Cowboys had their run through the 90s for the Super Bowls, they were playing all those key playoff games on the road, and the one they didn't was 94 when they lost at San Francisco. So I think that's the key thing. And then you're actually you're playing teams, with a lesser record Although if they ended up at the wild card team, they would be the 5th seed, and they would play one of those 9 and 8 teams from the NFC South in the first round, but it would be on the road.
Yeah, well, having somebody else have an opportunity to do the dirty work and play the 49ers, who appeared like that's just the team that the Cowboys match up the worst with in the entire NFC. I mean, so if you could maybe even possibly have somebody else get them out of the way for you, and then you get to play at home, that lucky streak would continue.
Well, we'll see if Jimmy Johnson and the Ring of Honor can do something about that.
That's right. The curse. Oh, Mickey, before I let you go, you are a proud Mizzou grad. Did you go to the Cotton Bowl?
Oh, absolutely did I go. I went to the Cotton Bowl game. I went to the Cotton Bowl Thursday morning coaches breakfast. I did as much as I could while I was still trying to work and get ready for a game the next day. But good win for Missouri. Anytime you can beat Ohio State, I always look at that. If you beat Ohio State or Russia or Ohio State or Michigan or Alabama, it's like beating Russia, right?
Yeah, you can throw Russia in there. That's fine. Yeah, absolutely. Mickey,
beat them too.
Yeah, Mickey, thank you so much. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, good to be with you, Paul.
There you go. Mickey Spagnola, DallasCowboys.com. Knew he was going to find his way out to that Cotton Bowl game as a proud Mizzou Tiger. And, I'm sure it wasn't a fun game to be at points because it was so low scoring. But when Mizzou finally got it done, holy cow. Or at least nerve-wracking game. I guess fun is different.
Yeah.
Nerve-wracking one thing. Sometimes nerve-wracking and fun intersect, but
yeah, certainly. It was a frustrating game to watch if you were looking to be wildly entertained by scoring. That was not the game for you by any stretch. But no, they did a really good job there at Missouri this past season. That was a really talented team, really fun team to watch. First time, they made their mark right when they joined the SEC. Made the championship game right away. You're like, oh, what's in store for Mizzou? And then, kind of faded these last few years, and now just come back with a burst of Luther Burden and great quarterback play and Brady Cook and obviously an awesome running back and just a lot of really talented players. So, yeah, excited to see what Missouri keeps doing and evolving into in the future. And this now rejoined by Texas and Oklahoma as their old Big 12 mates along with A&M. So, yeah, the new SEC, I'm not sure where Mizzou falls into it, but they just showed this past year that they can jump up in any given year. They can be, hyper competitive with a lot of the other schools in that conference. So, yeah, that was a big deal to go beat Ohio State in a bowl game and in a big bowl game such as the Cotton Bowl. That's not the tip top, but that's pretty dang good if you're a Missouri Tigers fan. So, yeah, if you won that game 6-3, you were going to be excited about beating Ohio State and winning the Cotton Bowl and finishing where you did. So, yeah, I would imagine he was going to take every opportunity to be down there. I wonder now if he's going to have to find his way down to Austin or drive up across the border to Norman to see the Tigers go play in those two spots now.
I know he's been to College Station a few times.
I'm going to say in addition to College Station.
Well, and they haven't really played that. They haven't played that much.
Not often.
Yeah. And they came to the conference together, and then they've
What is the game we're still waiting on? A&M going to Athens, or is it?
Yeah, A&M at Georgia.
Yeah, it's it's gonna be 2042, like the first meeting.
There's tons of fans that are like, yeah, we should see that game happen, and A&M's like, yeah, we should, yeah.
we should, yeah.
Yeah, we'll get right on that. Make sure we'll send in a note.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, not like I'm sure as a fan, I've been to Athens. It's a great place
between the hedges. Yeah.
It's a great place to watch a game, but right now, if you were trying to we would love to play there, I'd know you wouldn't. Yeah. You absolutely would not.
Fun road trip, not necessarily the game itself, but that's probably one that you're like, let's kick that can down the road a little while longer till we see if Mike Elko's got the goods. And once he does, let's head on out to Athens.
Yeah. If you can hammer down a sixer before you pop into the game, that's fine. Yeah. But if you're on shoulder pads, you can't do that. So that's not gonna fly. It's time now for the top 5.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Top 5 transfer QB portal fits. So these are guys that are in the portal right now, and these are where I think that they would fit very, very well with who's got open starter positions, or maybe open starter positions a year from now, and guys can develop in a program at the P5 level or at their other spot and be ready to take over in 2025. Number 5, Florida State's Tate Rodemaker, who came in and started against Florida and got a win, and then entered the transfer portal before the Orange Bowl. Look, Caden Salter, who we'll talk about later, is on his way to another school, and he's not there at Liberty. I think Tate Rodemaker would do really well as the starting quarterback at Liberty. I think the offense that Jamie Chadwell runs fits his skill set very well. He's not a guy who's played a tremendous amount because he was behind Jordan Travis, but I do think, given time and being the starter and playing at the G5 level, Tate Rodemaker could be very effective for Liberty, and I believe he's got 2 years left of eligibility, so that would be something that could be good for them. And I don't know, where he's visiting, where he's interested, but I do think that Jamie Chadwell could do well with Tate Rodemaker, who is mobile and has a pretty decent arm and all that.
Do you think Tate Rodemaker could have thrown for 117 yards the other day versus Michigan?
Listen, I would have set the over at 120, so yeah.
Yeah.
I think he could have.
I felt bad for him the way that was all kind of handled.
Well, I mean, and it's just like if you're Tate Rodemaker, basically the committee said, yeah, it's this kid's fault.
Yeah, this dude sucks. No, I mean, that's not what they said. But I mean, in so many ways, you can take it that way. You can take it that way, yeah. You can take it that way.
Yeah. Oh, his first start was a rivalry game on the road, which he won by 15 points. And by the fourth quarter, he was playing really well. And then he didn't get the other start because he got cheap shotted in the fourth quarter. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, well, we don't even want to see what he can do. Other than that, I feel Jordan Travis and Tate Rodemaker are the two guys I feel the worst for, because Jordan Travis took it a lot on himself about this is because I broke my leg. And then Tate Rodemaker's like, well, now all these old dudes in a room told me I suck. You know?
Well, apparently, according to, there's various reports, so I don't know. And everybody aggregates, and so you're not even sure where they came from originally. But I think South Carolina was a team that he was linked to, so it's up in the Carolinas. I mean, it's a place that he could definitely hit up. But, when I saw his announcement about not coming back after they brought in DJU, or before they even brought in DJU officially, but they were clearly looking at every option, Cam Ward and DJU. That was just, man, the CFP basically threw their middle fingers at you. Then Florida State turned around and basically said, we don't expect you to be the starter either. We're our quarterback hunting. So good luck to Tate Rodemaker. Hopefully he goes somewhere and has a big season and can just kind of be the one throwing the middle fingers for once, because that was a rough way to end a year where he was not supposed to be the guy, but made the best that he could with the situation, and unfortunate that didn't get another opportunity for Florida State there.
Yeah, and look, I think Florida State, they're just at a point right now where I don't think they want to take the risk of what's going to happen if he's the starter next year.
Oh, I get it.
It's just it's how it was. But, I hate it for him because I do think that he did everything he was ever asked to do.
Yeah.
And then,
I just want him to have go have a good career somewhere. Yeah. Not even so much screw you, Florida State, or screw you, CFP, but, man, just go out, have some success, and keep your head high, because you really were taking it from all angles. I mean, this last month, from the CFP to your own school, while you're still sitting there trying to do your damnedest for them. So I didn't blame him for saying, I'm out of here. I'm going to go ahead and bolt and not play in this bowl game and whatnot. But, yeah, good luck to him. And Liberty is certainly in need of a quarterback, and there's going to be big shoes to fill, because Caden Salter did pretty much everything for them this past year.
Yeah. Number 4. Jaden Maiava, who was at UNLV, I think Utah would be a fantastic fit for him. Look, Cam Rising's coming back. I know that he wants to go be a starter somewhere, but in the game of musical chairs, those might be drying up. Cam Rising also coming off a very devastating knee injury, so you don't know how healthy he's going to be. Plus, 1 year behind Cam Rising and then being the starting quarterback at Utah, and you'll probably get some reps there for the Utes. I think it's a great situation for a young guy who burst on the scene and showed that he's got some skills and an offense that I think would be good for him. But I don't expect this to happen, but I do think it would be a really, really good fit for him. Number 3, Eli Holstein, Oklahoma State. This dude was a 5-star quarterback a year ago. He went to Alabama at the same time as another 5-star quarterback. He was never going to play this year anyway, and they were always going to make a decision on what they were going to do. Not to mention they brought in Tyler Buckner, the transfer portal, and now he's back at Notre Dame playing lacrosse.
Yeah,
so
wild.
There's this whole thing. Look,
I would have loved to have had lacrosse in high school. That would have been so cool.
Yeah,
I would have been all over that.
I would have loved that.
My high school has
or
it now.
hockey even.
My high school has lacrosse and wrestling now, and we didn't before.
Wow.
And I think I would have been kind of good at both those. But especially like low to the ground, squatty guy,
Sure.
I could have done it. I think I'd look good in the singlet. But Eli Holstein, if I'm Oklahoma State, I'm kicking the tires on this kid. I am, because here's a guy who's a 5-star recruit. He was at Alabama. He was in a log jam. Now, maybe Eli Holstein's going to go to the next SEC school he could have gone to. Well, I guess it was down to A&M. That's not going to happen for Eli Holstein now. Yeah. So that one's off the table. So I don't know where he's going to go. But just a year ago, he was one of the most sought-after quarterbacks in the country. And Oklahoma State, look, you've got Alan Bowman, who's in his 7th year. He's not been totally healthy. Eli Holstein is higher ranked than any quarterback you'd have on your roster. He's coming from Alabama. I think it's worth putting him on your roster and letting him learn your system for a year. But I understand that this is not as cut and dry as I'm making it here. I just think that would be a smart thing to do, and I think it'd be a good fit for him because Mike Gundy's a damn good coach.
Yeah, I mean, he's proven that he's a dang good coach. He's been able to win a variety of different ways and styles and years and various iterations of the college football landscape. They've been able to kind of, take their lumps at times, but always bounce back. It's almost like that inflatable punching toy, where you hit it and it bounces right back up. It's kind of how Oklahoma State is. When they fall down for a second, they get right back up and, are back in the fight. And so, I know that they signed or have a pretty big-time 2024 quarterback that they're excited about, but if you want to bridge that now, I don't know about their depth chart off the top of my head, and I didn't go to look right away, but I see where you're coming from with this. It would make some sense as far as having a guy right there just in case of Alan Bowman getting injured and having somebody who's obviously highly heralded and has got a great skill set that Alabama wanted to bring him into the fold. So, I could see where this would be a potential pursuit for them,
Yeah, no, I think it would make a lot of sense. Wet Blanket doesn't think so. He's happy with the depth chart as it is.
Well, you like Smith coming in the 2024 class, Wet Blanket. I don't want to butcher his first name. Mayuliaki is probably close as I'll get without actually going to look at the proper pronunciation. But, a big-time player out of California that they just signed. So maybe that's part of your reasoning or who they already have on the depth chart. But, I see where your thinking is coming from with Eli Holstein.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just, again, I just think that you have to, find Alan Bowman's coming back. That's great. Good. But you have to also look at the whole Alan Bowman picture. And I think that this would be a smart thing to do. But, anyway. Number 2. Tailua Tagovailoa, Miami. This makes too much sense not to happen if he gets his eligibility. Miami desperately needs somebody. His brother plays for the Dolphins. They are obviously very close, considering that taking 2 snaps one time was just because his brother got hurt. So, I mean, Miami, and look, for Miami to strike out on Will Howard and Dante Moore and possibly Malachi Nelson and Cam Ward and anybody else that they've called to this point, to wind up with the guy who is now the Big Ten's all-time leading passer, would be a boon for Mario Cristobal and Shannon Dawson in that offense. Would be an absolute boon. So, honestly, if he gets his waiver, I would expect that Miami moves so fast it will make your head spin. It will make your head spin to get him in there, and I think the marriage is too perfect unless he just gets down there and doesn't like them and says, well, I'm going to go somewhere else. But I think that this is just too perfect. Too perfect.
Yeah, no, I mean, from a storyline perspective, that would be really great. His brother down there playing pro for the Dolphins, that would make a lot of sense for the reasons that you mentioned earlier and then just now. So, I mean, he's got to get his year of eligibility. That's what has to be cleared up first.
I'm just assuming he's going to because the NCAA is just at this point, they're like, we don't care.
I get it, but again, I'll just say if they do that, man, they open up the doors entirely for hundreds of guys to say, well, I deserve a 5th year because I played in only 5 games when
The NCAA is a substitute teacher before Christmas break.
I mean, yeah. But they do. I mean, they're not entirely toothless. They're pretty close.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I just think this creates so many more problems for you. But I understand that you feel like they don't. I mean, they brought on problem after problem after problem. They just keep taking them on. So this would be just yet another one. But it would be really hard to sort through all of the eligibility requests for an extra year based on, well, I know I passed the threshold, but I was honoring my injured brother. And as somebody pointed out in one of the threads that I saw, like the game, like one of the games in particular, they pointed out where he only played 4 snaps or whatever it was, but then he played after that, like a number of snaps. So it's like, again, I go back to who was keeping track of his play.
And maybe that's Alabama. Like, that's why Alabama's like, yeah, we kind of messed up here.
Yeah, so we got you back. Yeah, like that was maybe that is what it did. Maybe, hey, it was our bad. We shouldn't have played you that much. And so we're going to help you, protest this or try to get this resolved. I could see that from their perspective because that's the part where it just got bungled was he shouldn't have played the amount that he played that year, and this would not be an issue whatsoever. But, yeah, I mean, going and being the college quarterback in the town where your brother's the pro quarterback, knowing Miami's got a quarterback need, that would seem to make a lot of sense if he's able to get that 6th year from the NCAA. And I went back and I looked while you're talking a little bit about Oklahoma State. I forgot about Rangel being there. I think I was confusing him with Gundy as far as transferring goes, but you got Rangel and then Zane Flores as well, who's another recent signee. So I can see where you don't want to pack another young quarterback into the room, but I can also see where you're coming from. They weren't as highly rated as Eli Holstein was.
I'm just telling you, like, look.
I just wanted to clarify their depth chart there. Yeah.
Look, and maybe it's different for Mike Gundy, and good for him if there is, but there's no real loyalty to that anymore. You either help me or you go. And to me, if you can get a guy who's higher ranked than the guys you have, I don't know. In the era of modern roster building, it would not be against any kind of ethical dilemma to do this very same thing. I mean, so
all we know is he'll have no problem finding suitors. There's going to be somebody in the market for a former 4-star quarterback. That's for sure.
And all the pokey pokes in the chat, they've listed the roster for me here about their guys, and that's fine, but none of them were as sought after as Eli Holstein. That's all I'm saying. And
Agree to disagree.
And he was never going to play at Alabama this year anyway, so I don't think you can judge anything that happened at Alabama other than him jumping into a logjam.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. Number 1, Caden Salter at Auburn. This is too perfect not to happen, but maybe Auburn doesn't come with it as much, but he played for Hugh Freeze. He's a guy who was in the SEC when he first got into, when he came into college football at Tennessee, ran afoul of some things. So if Auburn can make this happen, and clearly, look, if you're going to bring in Hugh Freeze, you clearly don't care about somebody's past anyway, and so might as well bring his quarterback with him, but I think this would be a great fit in Hugh Freeze's offense because it was already a great fit in Hugh Freeze's offense, and maybe can help Auburn hit the ground running a little bit more than they did in year 1 of Hugh Freeze, which was, even though they made a bowl game, a dud.
Yeah, he's a really talented player. I've said that 100 times in the last 2 days, but just every week it got almost to the point of annoying because every week he had, a few hundred yards passing, 100 yards rushing, and I was just kind of waiting for Liberty to play somebody, and then they did in the bowl game. We saw what happened, but that doesn't take away from the great year that Caden Salter had because he was pretty much 90% of Liberty's, if not higher than that, their success there. A really talented dual threat quarterback prospect that was highly rated coming out of high school. Tennessee signed him, so take that for what you will as far as where he began his journey. It would only make sense to, like you mentioned, wind your way back around and reunite with the guy who brought you to Liberty in the first place and in the conference that you initially started off with, and maybe get your crack at Tennessee in the process or whatever. But yeah, that just seems to make too much sense. And so I'm curious about how many teams join the fray, especially with a lot of the dominoes having already fallen. But Caden Salter is definitely going to be at a program like Auburn when all's said and done, and that one makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Baylor, by the way, before we go, some breaking news just posted to Sikkim365.com. Baylor has added Ohio offensive line transfer Kurt Daniker. 1 year left of eligibility, figures to slot in at guard. So this is, Montana State offensive lineman Omar. I don't know how to say it. I'm not going to say it, but I'll try. Bedion?
Sure.
Yeah. And those two guys have come in on the offensive line. They needed help at that position. So Baylor adds Kurt Daniker, which is a cool name, to their offensive line. And this dude, he looks pretty badass, I'm going to tell you right now. Like, that's an offensive lineman right there. Sorry that we don't have a picture ready to go for you, but this news just broke. Thank you to everybody who watched today. Thanks to all of our guests.
That was number one?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, zoomed right through that. But, yeah, I mean, I'll have to learn more. I know that his name, the Ohio offensive lineman, was mentioned quite a bit in the last couple of days especially. Saw a lot of smoke around his name. So they need offensive linemen. Fans need portal, news. And so you got a double whammy there for both sides. So, yeah, it's a nice note to carry into the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, thank you to all our guests today. Thanks to Craig. Thanks to Garrett. Thanks to Emery. And thanks to Jack. This is 365 Sports. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Ideal MRI is a small family business